because we're
Hello.
live now.
Yeah, it's preparing the live stream, but it tells me on my end. I'll be right with you.
Yeah, it does say that we're live now.
All right, we're good there. Let's do it. All right, it looks like it's on, and if you go to YouTube, it's gonna be a little lag, I think, in the recording. So we'll go from here. Looks like we're good. Everybody good?
Mm-hmm.
All right. Well, I'm very grateful to have a panel. We changed it up last minute. Sean, what did you learn about Ken? Kind of give, because he's in the description, what happened with him, and but what was his involvement coming in anyways? Tell us a little bit about him so we know who we're missing.
So Kenneth King is also a Marine, such as Mr. Dickerson. He is a hair stylist and barber, very eclectic taste, a family man now, like most of you all are, former bachelor. And he's very outspoken when it comes to the plight of the black man.
All right, hold tight. Let me hit this record button. Got it. All right, so we're now recording too, so we're live and recording. So so Ken couldn't make it. He had something last minute come up, and got some screen issues going on too. But so Anthony Dickerson, you're the other newbie. What's your story, and how did Sean find you?
Well, so I'm a Marine. I've been out since 2005, so it's been a while since I've been out. But since then, I've been working in the IT industry and various levels of management with other companies, doing customer service stuff and whatnot.
Mm-hmm.
Sean and I actually go way back from school. We grew up together in Cordele, Georgia.
I definitely know where Cordele is. So I can see the tie there. And how did he find you for this?
Facebook. We're friends on Facebook. We kind of go back and forth sometimes. Sometimes we see eye to eye. Sometimes we disagree with things. But he decided to invite me and let us all have a voice on this forum. And I appreciate the opportunity.
Yeah, good. We're super happy to have you guys on and share the voice. If will, Maisha, if you'll, I'm calling you Dr. Williams, if that's fine. If you will, since we're recording now, introduce yourself again, and let's get that on record.
Okay, my name is Maisha Williams. I'm Academic Program Director for Economics at Morehouse College. I actually know Sean because he was one of my students. Good one.
I can imagine. Oh man. Well, that's cool. And so you are at what university again, if you don't mind me asking?
Morehouse College.
Morehouse. Got it. Well, is he a good student, or was he a good student or not? You can be honest on this. He's out of there now.
Absolutely.
She did not sound convinced, Miss Sean. I'm sorry.
Well,
when I scared him.
She was a great professor.
That's
hard,
cool. And
very hard, but I learned a lot. So
yeah. Well, I mean, that's a good thing, I think. So, well, we can go on about that, but okay, Annie, if you will introduce yourself again for people who may not have seen the first go round with you on here.
Yeah, I'm Annie. I live in Ohio now. I am a native of South Georgia, and I've had the pleasure of living in Georgia, South Carolina, Alabama, Tennessee, and now have found my way to Ohio.
Wow. Why? I didn't get said about you the first time. Why the moving around?
Oh, part of that was because I needed a change from the South Georgia scenery. Part of that was for school. Part of that was my husband was in the military, and so we moved for that. And this is his home. So when he was done with that, we moved back up here.
Okay. All right. Well, that's a good addition to what I already knew. I didn't catch all that the first time. All right. Well, where you want to start out with the debate, we're calling it. We got, I'm sure, multiple perspectives, and I think a voice.
Since we are, most of us are small town people, I just want to let everyone know that today In Cordele, a 10-year-old was tased by a U.S. Marshal.
What's some more details on that? I didn't hear
He
about
was
it.
playing in the yard and he wasn't paying attention, went into the neighbor's yard. The marshal overreacted and tased the 10-year-old.
So he wandered into the yard that's owned, I would say, by the marshal. There's a neighbor or something.
No, it was just the neighbor. The marshal was just there.
Oh, I'm sure
Is
there's
he
more
like-
to be said about that.
This is my shocked face.
So surprised, huh? Mm. Well, I mean, since we're on a racial debate, we'll say, what was backgrounds of each one?
The marshal was white. I mean, marshal was
Just go ahead
white.
and be clear. Yeah.
10-year-old was black.
I'm sure we'll hear more about that story, and
I'm sure the 10-year-old probably looked like he had a weapon. Who knows? That's probably what they're gonna say. That's what they usually say.
Yeah, and that's kind of where we're going in with this. Yeah, let's talk about the incident again, so we can get the new perspectives on this. And Annie and I and yourself will have to hear. We already know our perspectives, but we'll brief in on it. But I want to start with Dr. Williams, if you will. I guess run the incident down. I want to hear your perspective and how you see it and how you call it. Just start with the Mr. Floyd's incident where he was approached. How do you feel? How did you see that in your eyes?
Okay. So
I want to say this too before you get started. We're going to be completely honest, and blunt is not a factor. You can say this however you feel. Like I said, I say it again. This platform tonight is to share ideas, and we can be completely upfront with how we feel.
okay, so my preceding argument is probably going to disappoint you. I could not watch that video. I could not.
Understand.
I feel traumatized by many of the things that are recorded and shared in social media.
Yeah.
And because of that, because I need to be able to sleep at night, because I teach all Black men, and because I need to be able to think about the world that they live in and how they might be okay,
Mm-hmm.
I cannot subject myself to this type of thing on a continuum, because it makes me very nervous. It makes me very anxious. It makes me very sad.
Yeah.
And so I could not watch the video. Definitely from the details of the video, I'm distraught enough. And so how do I keep away from it? It's very hard, because even when you flip through somebody's timeline, when you scroll past somebody's live feed or somebody's what do you call that, Insta story, or
Mm-hmm.
it's everywhere. And so avoiding it was very difficult, but I have to do so. I will say the first visual that I had of this incident was photographs, right? So you have the photograph in one panel where the man is clearly alive, and then you have the photograph in another panel where he looks lifeless. And then, of course, there's a color contrast. You have the white man whose knee is dead center this man's windpipe.
Yeah.
I mean, it's that traumatized me enough to where I didn't feel as if I could watch the video. And so seeing these stories and how they play out on a continuum is very distressful to me. It doesn't mean I don't have anything to say. It just means that in order to protect my peace, in order to protect my state of mind, I can't ingest these things. I can't consume them. And so if you all have your ideas, I'm more than happy to discuss them, but I just couldn't watch the video.
Right. So as far as actually visualizing that, all you got is before you turned it off, and you pretty much know the rest of the story through. I got it. All right, that's neat. Okay. Well, before we move to the second part of this incident. Anthony, if you want to step in, what were your thoughts when you first, like the beginning of the incident, we'll say, what are your thoughts on how he was approached and how he came to be on the ground?
I actually haven't seen the parts leading up to how he got on the ground.
Yeah.
Not all of it. I saw the part where they approached him. They approached him in his car, right? And then pulled him out of his car. And then I saw a scene. I guess he was sitting down. They had him sitting down with his handcuffs behind his back.
Yeah. Immediately when he stepped out of the vehicle, I'm not sure. It was very quickly. They had him, crossing the curb and over the sidewalk, and was sitting down on the sidewalk up against the building.
Yeah.
And that's the reason I asked. But I was going to tell you, the reason I asked that question about the beginning of the incident is because we discussed recently on why he was approached the way he was, and why they quickly had him in cuffs, because there wasn't any aggression shown. And I've watched the video where we're between different videos, whether it be surveillance or cell phone footage or whatever. I've seen pretty much step by step every piece of the video, and he it's like there was no aggression, we'll say. He wasn't a threat of trying to get away. There wasn't any struggle involved. And that's why I asked these questions here about the beginning of the incident and I guess we're getting to is, does it seem like there was, already a vendetta in place, just, I guess, upon first approach?
And you already know how I feel about this, as we've discussed in previous episodes.
I'm gonna have to say I don't know, because I haven't watched those videos all the way through or from the beginning or anything. I just kind of saw them come across the news or whatever, and didn't really go into detail with them. So, I didn't really analyze them in that way.
Right.
Okay. There's no audio in them is kind of one thing, so we don't know what transpired. I don't remember, because like I said, I didn't watch the video in detail. I don't remember if he was aggressively dragged out of the car or if he was just kind of asked to get out of the car and put in handcuffs. And then they spoke with him after that. I do know, depending on the situation, that it is not unusual to handcuff somebody while they're being detained for questioning. But again, it all depends on the situation and the circumstances surrounding that situation. I don't know what happened before that. As I understand it, they were called out there, were they not?
Yeah, from what we can tell, from what we know, he attempted to use a counterfeit $20 bill in that store, and the store personnel had called, and as it doesn't say clearly if they forced him to leave the store or what they did, why by the time he had gotten outside and was getting into his vehicle was when the police showed up and approached.
Right. So I mean, I'd say it could be standard. There's some detail that I don't have to say whether or not I would feel like it would be kind of standard procedure, or it could be out of the ordinary. If they kind of just walked up and didn't ask any questions or really have any formalities or whatever, and just kind of snatched him out of the car, then that's a bit immediately aggressive. There may have been some history there that was maybe coming out. I saw some rumored reports that they may have known each other from previous job or something.
Yeah, they worked together at a nightclub, I think.
Yeah.
So I don't know. Maybe they had some sort of personal beef from back then. I don't know. But then fast forward, regardless of what transpired prior to that or their history or anything,
right?
There's no justification for how he treated that man. Point blank. Nobody can.
Like for the reason he was on the ground, I still to this day I don't understand why they put him on the ground.
Because he was in the back seat of the car, the police car, at one point in time.
So they did have him in the car at one time.
Yeah, they was like beating his ass in the back seat of the car.
I did not know that. I didn't see any video.
There's a video of that surveillance camera they released a few days ago, and it was the driver's side. The view was from the driver's side of the vehicle, and he was in the back seat, and there was one cop at the back, the rear door, and the other cops were on the other side of the vehicle. And as we all know, he ended up dying on the passenger side of at the rear passenger side of the vehicle. Mm-hmm. And the surveillance camera shows the cop with him in the back seat from the view of the driver's side. So he ended up on the opposite side of the vehicle on the ground while handcuffed. He was already handcuffed when they put him in the back seat of the car. So how he got out of the car and on the ground, we do not know. That's they have not released body cam footage yet.
I didn't know.
That was going to be something that I asked. Where's the body cam footage? Because as officers they have those, and you know, anytime officers are innocent or they're accused of something that actually didn't happen, they're quick to release that body cam footage, the next day. Where's it at?
The incident that we talked about with the other students, Sean was telling me about, that body cam footage has been out, or was out, I think, the next day, if I'm not mistaken. So we know it's possible to get body cam footage out quickly. That's the
difference between having a proactive mayor that holds her the police department accountable and having a laissez-faire mayor and lame duck attorney general that does not hold law enforcement individuals accountable.
Yeah. And it's, I guess, I'm going to get everybody's opinion on this, on the time it took from the incident until charges pressed. Obviously, we got to do this in two pieces. The, what's his name, Chauvin? It was a few days later, or a couple days later, I can't remember exactly now, but how many, but then it was even more delayed for the other officers. I guess, Annie, let's go with you. How, what's your thoughts on it taking at least, 3-4 days to get charges brought about for the first officer?
Well, I'll tell you, I heard several people on Facebook actually say, well, we need to wait till we get the coroner's report back before we can arrest anybody, because how do we know he didn't die from a drug overdose? And again, this goes back to this idea that we blame the victim and everything else under the sun, from something that we clearly know what happened. And I think that it's a shame that it took that long. We don't need a coroner's report to know that what we saw. It's not a magic trick. We know what we saw. And it's disappointing that people make every excuses for why they need further investigation. They need this. No, they needed to be arrested at the time that it happened. And the other officers needed to be arrested at the time that it happened. It doesn't matter to me, because I think we discussed previously that if you're involved in a crime, if you're involved in a felony, which is what murder is, in any way, you're charged with the same thing. If somebody's sitting in the car at the liquor store, the boyfriend robs it, guess what? Homegirl's getting charged too. So they should have all been charged with the same thing. And I don't understand why it took so long for that to happen. It's ridiculous. Yeah. Hold people accountable. And they were not held accountable. They gave them 4 days for the wife to file for divorce, to hide assets, to get lawyers, to get their story straight. I mean, everything was completely mishandled.
All right. Does anybody else want to weigh in on the
I would like to weigh in on that, because as the viewers have often heard me say, there's the justice system and there's the just us system. And the rule of law does not apply to everyone in this country, unfortunately. Just like with the Ahmaud Arbery case, charges did not get pressed until the case got nationwide attention and people start demanding justice. Justice for a Black person should not have to be demanded.
It should be fair. Obviously, that's the key word with fair. But I guess with Chauvin, I mean, does anyone feel like the damage that has been done, and we'll get into the talk about looting and the excessive rioting and such, but does anybody feel like much of this could have been avoided had those charges been pressed sooner?
Definitely.
I feel as if there is a systematic repetition that starts with the police report. for example, with this case of the fraudulent $20 bill, in most cases, you just swipe the bill and you don't take it. Everybody has that pen where you swipe the bill and you say it's fake and you say leave, like that's it.
Yeah.
And there are so many times when people make a police report and say, oh, it's a Black man, or oh, it's an African-American male, or it's a Black woman, or whatever the case may be. The police get a report that is the vaguest report you could ever fathom. And then they come into a situation with very little information, sometimes guns blazing, you know, and that is the first problem. The first problem is, how do we even get to the point? Like, this is the starting point. So the problem doesn't start with the police, but it's definitely a problem with the police. Individuals, whether they be Black, whether they be white, whether they be another race, when they report to the police, they have to take accountability for giving a true description of the culprit. And also for saying to themselves, is this something worth reporting?
Yeah, that's a good point. You know, this whole time I had not thought of that the first time. Is this really worth, you know, of course it's not worth approaching him the way the cops did, but is it even worth calling the police? You know what I mean, does anybody feel like that call was made, you know, thinking about the color of his skin?
I mean, even
if it had been slid past, or, you know, did you think they actually pushed the buttons on that call just to, no, but if it had been a white man, do you think that phone call would have been made to the police? Just a question.
Probably not. But even to that point, when you call the police, what do you expect to happen? The police come to deal with the law. And if a law is being broken, there will be repercussions. So that's the first part that blows my mind every time.
Yeah.
And you can even see this with the recent people who they're calling Karen, or the Amy, what was the lady's name? Amy, was it Amy Collier?
I believe so.
Who called the police on the guy when she was in the park?
Christian.
Oh, yes.
The police report, she said, in the police report, or the phone call she made, she reported this guy, and she said, there's an African-American male harassing me or bothering me, or whatever language is she. Now, imagine, this man could be gone and she could be in the park, okay. But if some random Black guy happened to be running past when the police came to retrieve that report, guess what? Now he's in lockup. When we make these reports, you have to be thoughtful about what is going to happen. I mean, even if you make, even about the tiniest things, that's where we start. And then when you actually get to the police report, or to the police who respond, what about how they respond? A person who is afraid and emotional is going to respond in such a way that might frighten a police officer who has a gun.
Yeah, I got it. And I didn't think about that correlation between that incident and the Floyd incident, but yeah, I mean, it could go back to the phone call. Is how was that phone call made, and how was it set? You know, somebody's attempted to use a $20 bill. They don't have anything in mind when they left the store. There's no theft. There's nothing. So it's still so minor that I get what you're saying, that initial approach, if you're going to call the police, it still should have, you know, it seems like it was heightened from the start when it definitely should not have been. I mean, I can't think of a lesser crime to be
calling the
be
police on a Black man, especially a Black man that's not doing anything or breaking the law. Calling the police on him should almost be considered attempted murder.
That's a very extreme way. I see your point. It's very extreme, but the way you would feel that way is because of what history says, or what, you know, how it's occurred in the past.
I want to.
That would be tough to be in your shoes. I get that.
I wanted to just interject something, because a lot of times this is not something that white people think about. It is something that people of color do think about when they're calling the police. I live in a very nice area. our houses are pretty close together. I heard a noise in the backyard. And I was home by myself. I was kind of like, and I heard people talking. So that worried me. So I called the police and I said, hey, this is where I live. I think somebody's like walking around my backyard. Will you send somebody just to kind of look and see? Hang up. And then I think, oh crap, my neighbor, it's an older couple, and their son sits in his car a lot at nighttime because he does live with them and he talks on the phone and, whatever, but he's Black. And so I called him back and I was like, hey, look, my neighbor sits in his car, please, just be advised that he is in there. He's not a threat. And very much like, that was my first, like, after I hung up with them, that's the first thing that I thought about. Oh God, they're going to shoot him, because he's in a nice area. He has, he sits in his car, he plays music or, talks to people on the phone, and he does it at nighttime because, his parents are older, so they're asleep. And that's the first thing that I thought about was, and so the next time, something like that happens, I am going to initially, like, that's going to be part of my initial, call is be advised that this, my neighbor is Black. Please don't shoot him, because I can't trust that they're not going to.
Shouldn't have to do that, but we all know that that is real, that exists, and that mindset exists. And I didn't think of it that way either until you said it. And I knew of it, but you put me in that case scenario. It is kind of sad that it's that way. So jumping back to the incident, how many minutes did we learn he was down?
9 minutes unconscious for 2 of them.
What I heard that's new to me, I didn't realize, is they actually believe he was non-responsive for the last 2.5 to 3 minutes.
Mm-hmm.
So does that mean that he probably passed away? We'll say, what is it? It was 9 minutes he was down. So that means between 6 and 7 minutes, he was likely already deceased. And I'm sorry, Dr. Williams, if I know that's harsh. I'm going to put that visual in your head. But I mean, is that what they determined? That's something new to me. I didn't hear yet.
I can't avoid it.
Yeah. Anthony, you want to weigh in on that about how he? That's curious to me. Someone especially with military background like yourself. The officer to put his knee on his neck. Do you know of any procedure or anything that could be justified for? I mean, is that just completely out of practice, or is there anything there's nothing taught there, of, is there? Because I've never heard of that.
Well, whether or not it's taught is going to vary from department to department. Okay. Is it a technique that can be used to control an unruly individual? Yes, it is. It's used at times in the military when trying to detain POWs, things of that nature. But in saying so, it's a limited use measure, right? It's something you use or a tactic that would be used just long enough to get an individual under control. Is not something you would use indefinitely like that man did. And that could be, again, there's a lot we don't know, and anything we say one way or the other at this point is kind of speculation to this, what I'm about to say. But that could either be a lack of training on his part, that he just doesn't know better, that you shouldn't use it for that long. Somebody might have showed him that technique one time and said, hey, this is a good way to hold somebody down if they're being crazy. But never, went on to say, you don't do it for 10 minutes. Or he could have intentionally did it. He could have been like, I'm just going to inflict as much pain on this individual as I can. We don't know for sure one way or the other at this point. We do know that he had no regard for whether that guy was comfortable or any compassion. And even if you want to be on if you want to give him the most benefit of the doubt as you possibly can, right?
Don't.
All right.
And just for argument's sake, even if you did want to do that, at the point where he goes lifeless, you can feel that up under you.
Mm-hmm.
And even if that is a legit technique to use for an extended period of time, once you feel that individual kind of, there's a difference between somebody being still and somebody being limp. And you can feel that. You can sense that. Yeah. And feel that difference from somebody just being still and not moving around to their limp at some point, your care for just another human being should kick in and say, you know what, let's check on this guy. Let's roll him over. Let's check his breathing. Let's check his pulse. Let's see what's going on. But at that point, like I said, even if anybody even wants to try and give that officer the most benefit of the doubt, at that point, there's a line crossed where he is absolutely negligent for that man's life, where there's no way that I can imagine that he doesn't know that he is in some sort of medical distress and needed to be checked and ignored that. Okay, that's no different to me than in the past when we've seen videos in major cities where a man's stabbed on the street, bleeding out, asking for people for help, and they just step over. It's no different.
You mean like the police officers did in Buffalo? You mean like that?
Where they pushed the old man down? What are you talking about?
Yeah.
I saw that this morning.
Well, yeah, I saw that this morning too, and that was pretty messed up. They pushed him down, but they didn't just ignore him.
They didn't help him. I didn't see any,
It was something like 15 officers walked by him, bleeding on the ground, and continued about their way.
I saw the blood on the ground on the sidewalk, and I was like, that doesn't send a signal. We can go on like that one as well. But so you say if that be the situation, a benefit of the doubt to that extreme, and then of course the opposite extreme is, purposely holding his knee down to the end, almost ensuring that there was quite a bit of damage, if not death, done here. You have an opinion on where you think it falls based on what you've seen, based on his behavior, or taking into everything into account that where would you say he lies on that, between the two extremes?
Based on what we know now, and I know there were he's got a history of abuse issues.
Yeah, he's had, we determined that before too. He had many complaints, I think they call it.
Yeah, complaints. I've not looked into those individually to see what specifically they were, but my guess, where kind of I am on this individual is he's just an asshole, and I just don't think he cares about other people. Period. Yeah. And I don't know if he set out and said, I want to kill this person, or if he just was indifferent.
I think, and I've said this on the previous show, Chauvin wakes up every morning and makes 3 wishes. A nigga would. And he wanted them to give him a reason so he could snuff their life out. The man has multiple excessive force complaints over his career. 2 people died in his custody. The only person that got shot that didn't die was a Native American. The man has no regard for the life of minorities.
Okay, so it's not just so you're saying it's not just, he's a white supremacist, what was that?
He is a white supremacist.
I want to address something that was said by Anthony. And I say this, but I am tired of hearing people say, well, we don't know. Well, it could be, or let's give that is not holding somebody accountable. That is making excuses for them. And when we talk about training and, well, maybe he was shown this way, he knew how to do his job. And if he didn't know how to do his job, then he shouldn't have had it. And that's the problem, is we have people running around with guns and badges who don't know how to do their job. If you don't know how to do it, then you get fired. Simple. There's no, well, I'm gonna give you the benefit of the doubt when you're dealing with the people's lives. And as far as him being shown techniques or how not to use those techniques, the techniques that we're talking about, that Anthony may have learned in the military, those are to combat enemy insurgents, or those are to use against foreign forces. These are American citizens. These are people that are on our soil. We don't do that. That's not, you don't use those type of techniques when someone is not resisting. We know that he didn't resist. When they handcuffed him and they got him out of the car, he didn't resist. When they put him down on the wall, he didn't resist. When they walked him across the street behind another car where we can't see what was going on, he didn't resist. When he was put in the car, we don't know, he didn't resist. And then somehow he ended up on the ground. He should have never been on the ground. There's no, well, if he could have done, no, he should have never been on the ground. He wasn't resisting. And at the time that you want to say if he resisted at all, it was when that man's neck or his knee was in his neck and he was fighting for his life. Anybody is going to resist at that point because it's your body's flight or fight. And we're not as humans, we're not built to just lay down and die.
But see, what disturbs me so much about him being on the ground with his neck is, I try to imagine, it's crazy. I try to imagine my hands behind my back and someone's knee on, and I'm on the ground at that. I don't know how the guy lasted several minutes as he did, because honestly, I mean, it's so, I don't know, it's such an uncomfortable position, obviously, but it's so damaging. I don't see, well, that's what bothers me is that's a position right there. And like, that's why I went straight to Anthony, was asking if there's any type of training at all we could hear, military, whatever, that actually puts that into place, because I'd never heard of that. But to be in that position, there's just no possible, there's no way out. The guy, I mean, I'm surprised he could even make his comments that I couldn't speak, I don't think, if I had down like that. And, but I just never saw him at any time show any type of empathy for human life. That I just think that he was holding him down, and I don't know if it was a grudge or what, but it just looked to me, and I looked at it hard too, because I wanted to have something to say, okay, this guy maybe didn't know, but even the look on his face, everything just, it's not looking good for him, and that's what disturbs me, because, I care about human life. And I just didn't see anything on him that says, hey, I might not need to be behaving this way. I shouldn't be practicing this exercise on this guy, So yeah, I just, that's the part that bothers me about that moment, is he didn't draw back at all, even when, and this makes it worse, even when he says he can't breathe, and even what he called to his mother one time, I think. And but there were witnesses standing there saying, they was notified, hey, look, this guy can't breathe. He really can't breathe. Why do you think he didn't respond, even when everyone is telling him? It's not like he was unaware. There were several people telling him. So he definitely knew, I mean, if anybody can jump in, they want to as well. But the fact that there was witnesses calling out that he couldn't breathe, what do you think? Why do you think he didn't do it when the witnesses, were even screaming that? Does anybody want to say something about that, about the witnesses screaming at him and he still held his grounds on what he's doing?
Yeah, he didn't care.
I think at that point he had decided that he was going to kill that man.
Dr. Williams, you had a thought on that? You think that's?
I think there is something about being a person of authority that makes you say, I don't have to listen to other people.
Okay.
And even as an instructor, I have to check that mentality myself and try to remain fair,
Okay.
try to remain kind, because when you're in charge, it's hard not to say, okay, I'm the authority, listen to me. It's harder to even say people around me might know something different than me. And I think having that power for a person who can't handle it, which in this case he seems as if he could not,
right?
He couldn't. His ego wouldn't let him hear the people around him saying, oh, this might be a deadly position, or oh, this man maybe really cannot breathe. I mean, if I'm the authority and I know the technique the way I think I do, then I'm not going to kill him, right? Yeah. But if in fact it happens, I'm the authority, right? And so I think for me I think he just didn't want to give up that power. I think that's what it was. Even when he heard people say, let it go, he didn't want to give up that power.
Yeah. And I get what you say. It's almost like an egotistical, at that point.
It's you're right. I mean, it's a power trip. I mean, that's what it is. But like I said, even and like I said, that's a pretty lax stance on it. I would say to think that's his motive. But even if you, like I was saying, and I'm not saying I have that stance, but I'm saying if somebody even wants to have a stance that wants to give him the benefit of the doubt for the most part, that either he didn't know what he was doing, and you're right, if he doesn't know what he's doing and how to perform his job, he shouldn't be in that position. Absolutely. But as far as his motive, if you want to give him the absolute benefit of the doubt and you want to say, well, I don't think he intended to kill the guy, or that he knew he was killing the guy, I don't think you can say that he didn't know he was killing the guy, because like I said, if you have somebody up under you, even without him being on his neck, if you have, which the proper technique that most agencies that I'm aware of teach is not to put the pressure on the neck, it's to put the pressure in between the shoulders, on the upper back area. And that's where you apply the pressure at. But so, like I said, he may have been trying to do that technique and didn't know it. And if you're trying to take that most benefit of the doubt approach to it, even then, at the point where the man goes limp, you feel that.
Yeah.
You know something's not right up under me. And when you continue on and you don't even stop for a second and even stick, I mean, you could even maintain the position if you really believe that's the position you need. And you can still reach down and you can check the man's pulse. You can still reach down and you can put your hand up under his nose and see if he's breathing. You can still check and see if he's living, but you just ignore the signs up under you. And it just, I mean, like I said, I have no defense for the man. He's a monster.
He's a murderer.
He felt that man dying up under him, and he didn't care.
So his, and you know, this is going to be his argument that I didn't mean to, I didn't realize I was doing that, is gone, is out the window. But you know, and that's because, I mean, look how many times, because like you said, he felt it. And then of course too, is there are other people are telling him. So yeah, I agree with you. His ability to say, I did not mean to, or I didn't realize what I was doing, is gone. I just don't see where he can have that argument, and I really don't think any judge would honor that. You know,
well, Clay, I'm certainly not the smartest person, and I'm certainly not the most educated, and you know, I can probably get through a first aid class, but even I know that if I put my knee to your neck for 9 minutes, I'm gonna kill you. Like, especially if I'm of comparable size to you and I have you in that position and your hands are behind your back restrained and you can't defend yourself, what do you think is going to happen? Yeah. Like, anybody with an ounce of common sense knows that's what's going to happen.
Which puts it back towards intent. If we know and we're not trained, then it's very likely he knew. And for him to keep going, all that says is there's intent. And that's disturbing to accept that.
I think there was intent, but I also think there was an intoxication of power.
You keep going back to that, and I agree. I understand. And I mean, what you're saying.
You can't, when you have done something wrong, if you admit it, all power is lost. Even if he would have acknowledged that the man was dead beneath him, then he can't then go back and say, oh, I didn't know he died underneath my knee. You know what I mean? Mm-hmm. So you have to, if this is how you start, this is also how you finish.
It's like when spouses get in arguments sometimes, like, you might know you're wrong, but you know what? I got to stick to my guns because I said what I said and I got to be right.
You get it.
Yes.
Not going to say nothing about that.
To add to the fever that Dr. Williams was saying about the power trip, add to that his history of having those complaints or those other incidents that he got away with.
Entitled to do that because he had gotten away with it for so long.
He felt
untouchable. He was above the law.
Point. Very good point. That's, you know, and we're not the only ones looking into that history, but that makes perfect sense. Yeah, they should look at that and say, okay, there's a history there.
That's another issue, Clay. Like, why does it take him murdering somebody in broad daylight in the middle of the street and having it recorded, to then us being like, well, maybe we should look into it. No, you look into it before. You look into those excessive complaints. You make sure that those officers are checked. And and I know that we've all heard people say, well, it's not all officers, not, it's just a few bad apples. Well, you know what? Finish the rest of that proverb. It's a few bad apples ruins the bunch. And if you let people go unchecked, the whole bunch is ruined. It's up to the good apples, should there be any, that they need to check the bad ones. And that he never got checked. He never was held accountable in the past. So why should he be held, in his mind, why should he be held accountable now?
He was above the law.
Add something to kind of what Anna was. Anna, I'm sorry. Is it Anna or Annie, or does it matter to you?
My government name is Annie, but you can call me whatever, as long as it's appropriate.
All right. Well, to add to what you were kind of saying there, to kind of what the back end problem for this guy is, and if you want to kind of that might give a little insight to maybe the lack of other officer involvement there, is sometimes it's a leadership problem. You might have within the department, and you might have other good officers who call out and report bad officers who are either overzealous or constantly resort to force too quickly, but they get dismissed. And so then those good officers get tired of reporting it and nothing happening, or they report it, and after a certain number of times of reporting something, they start to get looked at in a bad light within the department. So now they're getting negative feedback from the department, or negative feedback from their leadership, who starts to brush them off.
That's a good point.
So things like that. And so then as that individual who does that, you get jaded. You get to the point you're like, I just kind of come here and hit the clock and go home now.
I got it. That's another good point. I didn't think about it that deep as well, as far as internal to the police station.
They get heavily retaliated against by crossing the blue wall or the blue line. Yeah. Speaking truth to power. You'll rarely see that in law enforcement. A friend of ours that we spoke about before, that was a corrections officer, spoke up about mistreatment of African-American men in a correctional facility. Spoke up about racial epithets and slurs being slung around in reference to the inmates. And instead of people taking his complaints and doing some type of corrective actions, he was retaliated against for crossing the blue line.
That's
not shocking.
Yeah, it's all non-productive each way we look at it like this, but I guess what if it takes someone just courageous enough to stand up for what's right to the end?
And like Anthony said, poor leadership.
Or lack of.
I work in the healthcare industry, and I have to register with the Board of Pharmacy. And each state, for the most part, or each state that I've ever worked in, has a Ohio Board of Pharmacy, a Georgia Board of Pharmacy, Tennessee Board of Pharmacy, and they are a collective group of people picked that are diverse. They're all different kinds of backgrounds, and if anything, and we can report things to that anonymously or whatever. And if fraudulent waste and abuse, that type of thing, even technicians to pharmacists to whoever, if they're doing something that falls outside of the law, or they're doing something that is not allowed, or not to the patient's best interest, then they are people who can review that independently. They're not a part of this hospital pharmacy or this small business or this chain. They are their own operating group, and they can snatch your license because you have to be licensed in the state in which you work. So if you're found to be guilty of these allegations or whatever, upon an investigation, they will take your license. You will not be able to practice in that state anymore. And I don't understand why we don't have something like that for officers in each state that's independent of any small precinct or city. It is an entity all its own. So they're above that retaliation.
To an extent that kind of is there.
Then why is it not working?
Well, it's not used. So in each state, there is for lack of a better term, there's a licensing board for officers. You have to be certified by the state to be allowed to be a law enforcement officer at any agency or any city in the state of Georgia or any other state, right? So if you, for example, if you're under investigation, like an internal investigation, and you decide, you know what, this isn't going my way, I'm just going to quit. I'm going to try and jump to another department. In Georgia, at least, I don't know about other states, but at least in Georgia, your certification is automatically revoked if you quit your department in the middle of an investigation, especially if it appears that you're trying to avoid the possible repercussions of that investigation. See what I'm saying? So that's there, and that is the GPI. It would be if somebody sees something that they want to report and they want to kind of be anonymous about it, or they want it to be handled from outside of their internal department, because from agency to agency, it's going to be different. Yeah, some agencies that have a really good internal affairs department, and they really stick to their oath of trying to hold their brothers and sisters accountable, and they're hated for it, but they do it. And then you got other agencies, mostly going to be your smaller ones, I would suspect, because they're a closer group. They don't have as many people. So your IA department is going to be wearing multiple hats. The person who is backing you up on a pullover yesterday may be the person that's also doing an investigation on you tomorrow. And so there may be a little bit more bias there. Whereas in larger departments, they can actually have that separate department, that separation between their officers. So you lose that personal bias there. But if you wanted to call for an investigation within your department that was handled by an outside agency, you would go to the GBI. That's who would do that. And that's what happens, or the FBI. And that's what happens most of these cases where you have that situation and it seems like something should have been done but didn't get done to an officer. And the GBI like down in Brunswick, right? And we got the DA down there who seemed like they showed favoritism to their friend who should have been arrested because they were their friend, or they had worked closely with him or whatever. So they kind of gave him the pass. And it took the GBI coming in, and now the GBI is pretty much investigating the whole dang system down there from top to bottom.
Why can't I just want it to work effectively every time? And it doesn't.
Agree.
There's a whistleblower policy at almost every company, institution, or an agency. From the janitor all the way up to the CEO. There's a whistleblower policy where you are not allowed to be retaliated against. You do not even have to disclose your own identity. So to say, oh, I didn't want to come out or be the one to say anything, that's been in cowardice. And for you not to say something makes you just as complacent with the crime as the person that commits it.
Yeah, that's a good point. And that's what I'm going to lead into when we come up to the next topic. But I just want to mention, as a viewer put in a chat box here, and it kind of pertains to what you're saying, says bad behavior is usually rewarded in the workforce. I mean, anybody want to say something about that? A viewer type that in on the live feed.
I agree. I think that in a lot of cases, they absolutely are, because you have that small sect of people within a department or within a workplace and they're breaking the rules, but they're getting it done, and they have like high numbers. They're bringing in a certain number of tickets and arrests every month. So they're hitting their quotas, and you can sit there and tell me till you're blue in the face they ain't got them, but we all know they do. So they're looked at like they're doing their job. Well, in my field, I'm responsible for putting in information. Let's say I'm responsible for that. So I can hit 200 patients, and I can make sure I put in 200 patients. But you know what? If I put in 180 of those patients wrong, it does no good. And now that's all messed up. Well, just because you hit a number doesn't necessarily mean you're doing it correctly, you're doing it the right way, you're doing it the moral way. You can be just as wrong as anybody else.
And, well, since we're talking about, behavior amongst, colleagues there in this situation, anybody jump in when they, want to say, but what was if you were one of the officers one of the other three, I call them, what would you have done, or what should they have done because now they have charges? What could they have done? And I know maybe an obvious answer, but really let's think about it in what we've just, bringing in what we just talked about. In other words, why didn't they? Were they below in rank on this guy and didn't want to, step up against their authority? Why didn't they? Does anybody have a cut plate answer there? Think about what we just talked about, but why didn't one of the three, and two of them actually helped, but why didn't they say something? Why didn't they? I mean,
can I use the term racist pigs? Is that okay?
But do you think they concurred with everything that was going on in Chauvin's mind? Do you think they felt the exact same way?
It's called the mob mentality. So when you are in a group, and especially if you're not an independent thinker, which obviously these guys were not, because if they were independent thinkers, it would have put an end to the actions and not partake in it.
Yeah.
So they got influenced by Chauvin, mob mentality. They jumped on board. They jumped on the bandwagon. They drank the Kool-Aid, and they helped them kill that man.
Does anybody think that they failed to step up out of fear or embarrassment, anything along that line? Because, just put yourself in that shoe. And he's like, okay, my thoughts are he's killing this guy, but am I too scared to say something? Am I the wuss here, or am I just in complete concurrence with this guy, and I'm allowing this because this is what I'd be doing too? I just feel like one of the three other cops in their mind should have been at least wondering, hey, is this guy doing right? Is anybody have anything to add to that? What should they have done, and how they behaved, and why they didn't step up?
So in my mind, right is right and wrong is wrong. And if you have something to say that is true, you should not be in fear for anything. You should not be afraid. If you know what you're saying is true, and you know what you're saying is correct. On the other hand, in theory, that's always true. In practice, that is much more difficult when somebody is your colleague or peer, when somebody is your superior, and it's your turn to speak up. That does not always happen in the way that it should. It doesn't. And you just think about your job right now, right? If your boss tells you something and you disagree with it, if you are 100% sure that what you're saying is correct, you should say it. In theory, that's what happens. But in reality, that's not exactly what happens. I'm not sure if those people knew. Mm-hmm. I'm not sure if those people knew that this guy would die, but certainly there are officers that hold their colleagues accountable.
Yeah.
There are officers that when they see something done wrong, they tear into their colleagues like nobody's business, regardless of the repercussions.
Yeah.
But that doesn't always happen in reality. Right. And especially if you don't want to undermine, right? Because if you're an authority and I'm an authority, and I know what I'm doing because I have the same credentials that you have, right?
Yeah.
then when you're doing what you're doing, I don't say anything because I don't want you to say anything when I'm doing what I'm doing. I want you to interfere. Because I know equally as much as you. So I don't know if that was the case. In this particular instance, when somebody's life comes to play, I find it hard to believe that you stand there and say nothing. Always baffles me. Now I know that officers, and I'm sorry this is so long. I know that officers have this theory or training that tells them no police stop is a normal stop or whatever it is they say that makes them always be on the offense, even though they carry a taser, a gun, a nightstick, and whatever else they carry. That always makes them be on the offense. But entering into the situation already at an advantage, at least in my mind, already at an advantage, and having other people a part of your cadre already at an advantage. You need, it is necessary that they have the discipline and the humanity to just be careful in their dealings and kind and always think about the repercussions. It's important. It's imperative. Absolutely. Especially in a position of power. And that goes for everybody around.
Well, you said it right, because it's depending with a person's life. So if you don't have the guts to stand up for someone's life, then you should definitely not be a police officer, because that's where it becomes part of your job. Anthony, I'm kind of curious, have you been around that behavior in your service time, where someone was, like to say the inferior officer was in the right, but still afraid to call out their superior? Have you seen that in any of your time?
Yeah, absolutely. That's very real. Like you said, in theory, and Mashawn mentioned earlier that, almost every organization has, the whistleblower protection stuff in place on paper. And in theory, we all have the courage and the moral compass to stand up when we see something questionable, and even if it's our superior, and call them out on it. But in practice, like she said, that doesn't always happen, because I'll tell you why. Because when it's your superior, sometimes anyway, when it's your superior, or maybe they're not even superior in rank, but they've been on the force longer. Maybe you've been here 2 years, they've been here 15 years. So you're kind of like, this doesn't feel right. Hey, man. And actually, one of the officers, if I read one report's right, if it's accurate, did try and tell him, hey, maybe you should, let off a little bit. And he said, no, we're good. Shut up. I don't know which officer it was, but I was pretty sure one of the reports or one of the witnesses said that one officer did try and tell him to get off. But he was kind of brushed off. And so let's just play that scenario. That guy might have been, like I said, only on the force a year or 2, 3, 4 years. Anyway, have less experience than Chaffin. So he might have been like, hey, this doesn't feel right. I'm going to say something. He says something, and then the guy just kind of brushes him off. And then maybe in his mind, he's like, well, he's been around longer. He must know what he's doing.
But in your mind, do you feel that would absolve him in any way in the courts? It doesn't absolve, I'm sure, any of us here. Obviously, that it's still not enough. But do you think the courts might see that differently? Like say, okay, this guy at least spoke up for a half second, and I try to think about the courts versus what's real.
I think that could help him in the courts. To what extent, I don't know. I don't think any of these guys, if done right, I don't think any of these guys are going to get off with nothing. So for that individual that at least tried to do something, he may get a reduced something. I don't know what that looked like. I'm not a lawyer, but it may help him. He may get a little leniency in sentencing, maybe. But I don't think anybody's going to get off free, unless they get greedy. Because there's an old saying that says, "There's what you know, and then there's what you can prove. And if they try and take the charges too high, then just think each step higher that you go, that makes the burden of proof harder as well. So that's oftentimes why so many people get offered deals, or they get offered a reduced charge to what their original charge was, because it's easier to meet that standard of proof than it is to meet the original standard of proof.
Right. With an admission, it gets to be a easier case to prosecute versus having to have a jury decide. Is what you're saying?
And that's what makes it so incredibly sad and egregious that we have it on video. It was in broad daylight in the middle of the street, and you're telling me that that we can't charge them to the fullest extent of the law because we can't prove it. When they are on video. So in my opinion, that makes it just kind of like, okay, well, it's open season because there's not,
it's been open season on black men ever since Prohibition. Prohibition. Let me tell you something. Why it's open season on black men and why they're saying they can't prove any of this stuff, because they don't want to. We saw Rodney King get his ass beat for an extended period of time, and those people got off. We saw the young immigrant in New York get shot over 40-something times. None of them people got prosecuted. They're saying that these officers in Minneapolis could be looking at a maximum of 40 years in prison. I seriously doubt that any one of those guys are going to get the max 40 years. And since we're talking about the charges, I want to hear what the panel has to say about the charges being up for Chauvin from third-degree murder to second-degree murder. Because in my opinion, as I said before, it should be first-degree murder, because he did have extreme malice. It was premeditated, and he knew exactly what he was doing.
Anybody want to jump in?
Prove premeditation for first degree. You'd have to basically say he woke up that morning, knew where he was going to be, planned to be there when he was going to be there, and intentionally went there when the call got there.
That's what I think happens. That's what I told you. He makes 3 wishes every day. He makes 3 wishes. And one of them wishes came true that day, and he was able to kill him another black man because he'd done it 2 times before.
I think what separates this one from a law standpoint between first and second degree is that he was called to come to the scene. He wasn't, riding around looking for Mr. Floyd and then found him and did what he did. He was called to come. And I think by the law book, that's what's going to keep it from being upgraded to first degree, I guess.
How long do you have to, it's premeditation is the standard, is what we're talking about here. How long do you have to plan to kill somebody? Because the second that he put his knee on that man's throat, that you're planning that at that point. Like you knew what you were doing.
It for premeditation, it basically has to have been intended and planned prior to any action, essentially. So like, for example, if you walk in and you catch your spouse, in the heat of a moment with another person, and you decide in that moment, you know what, hell no, these people are going to die right now. That's not premeditation. You did plan it. You did intend to do it at that moment, but that was in the heat of the moment decision, not well beforehand. I've planned this out. I figured out how I'm going to do it, and now I'm going to execute that plan. And that's premeditation, essentially. And that it if you want to take Sean's example, it could be. But the problem is how do you prove that in court of law? And if you take that charge to a jury and you can't prove that without a shadow of a doubt, you end up letting him off with anything.
And to that point, the litigators have to be cautious. They cannot just go up in that court with anything, because what happens is if he gets off at the hand of that litigator, you think people are burning up stuff now? You think people are tearing up stores now?
Yeah.
They have to go and prosecute him with something they can win. If they do first degree, and then people are going to be even more pissed off. So litigators have to be able to go for what they can prove. I agree with you wholeheartedly. Let's give him the whole shebang. But in reality, can he be convicted of that? And that's going to make people even angrier, because part of the problem is these people don't get arraigned, right? And then the other part of the problem is they don't get convicted, right? And that really makes people angry, especially when you see it time after time after time. So then you get a litigator who's probably thinking in his or her mind, if I could go back to the time of arraignment and just put the charge in place that I know should have been in place, instead of trying to make people happy at that time, then I would have had a better overall outcome. And so I think this is, in economics, we call this a second best solution. You can't get to the first best, so you got the second best. That's what it is.
Yeah. Now, one way you can kind of close that gap between taking the lesser charge over the higher charge you'd like to do is you can stack some charges, right? So you can do, besides just second degree murder, you could do, neglect. You could do.
That's kind of what they did, isn't it?
Yeah. And you can add on some other lesser charges. And then when it comes time to sentencing, the judge could make it where, you're getting 30 years for this charge, then you're getting 10 for this charge, then you're getting 15 for this charge, and so on and so on. And the judge has the power in most cases. Some cases, depending on the crime, it's written exactly how it can be served and has to be served. But the judge can either decide these can all be served at the same time. So essentially, you're
or consecutively.
Exactly. Or they have to be served back to back. So when you finish one, then you start the other one. And that's how they can kind of get around it. And even though he wouldn't be officially charged with first degree, he could end up getting the same punishment he would have gotten as first degree, with the exception of death penalty.
Yeah, I'm not a lawyer or anything like that, but I've had a few charges on me before, so I know how that goes.
I can go get you one real quick.
Of course. Well, which do you think is more satisfying to the crowd, we'll say? A higher charge but has a deal that he does less time, or a lesser charge but he stays off the street longer? He's in prison longer. Which, in other words, trying to get a gauge for which is more important, him being in the pen or him getting a higher charge. I have my opinion on that, but I want to see what everybody else thinks. Which one do you think is more satisfying to the crowd?
I don't know about what's more satisfying to the crowd, but as far as I'm concerned, I could care less what the charge is. I'm more concerned with what the sentence is. Mm-hmm. And I'm for whatever they have to do to get the highest sentence that they can get and actually get through court and convict and put on him.
I get that. And here's my counter to that. And here's why I'm thinking it's more important that he gets the higher charge, even if it means less time on him, is this sets the precedent. They're going to go back to this in future cases. If he gets that lesser charge, I don't care how long he's in there right now, but immediately, I don't care what his sentencing is, the charge is more important, because in the future, and this is going to happen again, I pray it doesn't, but it's going to happen again. But the next case, they're going to look back and say, oh, well, Chauvin, he just got manslaughter instead of murder. We're going to, so in law, they go by the precedent more than anything else, it seems. So if this sets the tone, if it's going to set the example for future cases, then we're going to need him to be convicted of the higher charge. And that's just my opinion. Someone can agree or disagree with that, but it's thinking long term, thinking future cases, we're going to need the charge to be as high as possible if we're going to convict others of this when they act the same way. Because I'm not about just trying to, let's just make a statement here. I'm saying let's actually build a foundation for how to stop this from happening in the future, or prosecute it when it does in the best way, for the deserving way, we'll say. So, does anybody want to contradict that in any kind of way?
No, I think both solutions are solutions that in the public's mind make sense. I don't think one is more valid than the other. But I think people whatever justice looks like to individuals, that's what it looks like to them. Whether it be get the highest charge of the law, or whether it be he gets as many years as possible. That's going to be subjective from person to person. I think that more people than not will be more satisfied if this man is convicted and the judge who is responsible for sentencing does a proper job of sentencing, whatever that means for the subjective individual.
It means they don't hug them and give them a Bible. That's what it means.
Oh, don't even get me started on that, mammy. That coon.
Yeah. That's funny.
If it wasn't for mandatory minimums, she'd be out right now.
Yeah.
I think Chauvin should get the needle.
I do too.
They're like acupuncture. He should get like 12 needles at one time.
Well, my take on that, and this might be gruesome on me, is I think that's an easy way out. You know,
I think they should pour them in some honey and let them in general population, and just let the guys have a good old time with them.
I believe, and the general population, because for whatever time he spends, he will be a dirty cop in a jail that's probably populated by minorities, and it will not be good for him.
That's what I said. Yeah, if you're wanting him to suffer, then obviously the needle's not going to give him that suffer time. And I'm not trying to be inhumane, but I'm saying, if someone I just try to put it personal. If someone murdered my brother the way that was done, I wouldn't want him to just, as soon as he's sentenced, be free of conscience of mind. No, I want him to sit and think about it for quite a long time. That's the better punishment.
If you're served with the death penalty, it's not like it happens in a month. There are years and years and years and years. There are people sitting on death row 15 years.
That's a good point. Yeah. So in reality, yeah, he still might be sitting there for some time, but
the idea is, for me anyway, is that we need to set a precedent so that it serves as a deterrent. But also, I kind of feel like if you are in a position like he was, you're a police officer, you're there to serve and protect and uphold the law, and that is your job. That is a part of your entire being, is to serve, protect, and uphold the law, and you break it in such an egregious way, then you should be held to a higher standard.
Exactly. There are laws in most states. I'm not sure if this is a federal law or not, but if you kill a cop in the line of duty, you automatically get the death penalty.
Correct.
You go straight to jail. You go straight to the chair. Do not pass go. Do not collect $200. You kill the cop in the line of duty. The penalty for that is death. If a cop kills somebody, there needs to be a line in the sand. There needs to be a mandatory minimum saying if you kill somebody on the job, you're going to get a needle.
Yeah, if it's maliciously like this, yes, that makes sense to me. I shouldn't, don't give a police officer, because like I said, if you're going to say police officers are human beings too, then you got to hold people to human being standards.
I'm not talking about self-defense and doing what they had to do
if they do it
and serve. But when you go out and kill somebody, like we've seen it, Eric Garner, Breonna Taylor, Ahmaud Arbery, I wish I had enough time to go off to call off the names. If we start killing these damn cops like they kill us, I promise you, open season on black men will come to an end.
If anything's going to set the precedent here, it is now. This case is going to go in the books for sure. And I hate, and this is where we're about to get into the writing. I hate that it's taken this much to get a point across. It has taken national exposure. This is worldwide exposure. There's Australian news is reporting on this every day. This is such a big thing now.
At embassies across the world. There are people marching outside of our embassies across the world right now, because even they see the egregious acts that have been happening here. Even they understand, enough about our justice system to know that that enough is enough.
Yeah. protesting right now is justified more than any other time in anything I've seen. Well, I can say more, but it's just as justifiable. But right now, it's definitely fitting the cause for protesting. I am not against, this massive protesting that's going on. But let's go into the looting. Let's go into the bad stuff. Let's start with Dr. Williams. How do you feel about the looting? And you are in Atlanta, is that correct? Can you hear me? I can. Okay, it had a little lag. I couldn't tell. How do you feel about the looting? I like to get people's opinions on this, or and people's perspectives. Whatever you want to say, I want to hear it.
Am tired of seeing a person of color being murdered, mistakenly killed, if that's what they say. I'm tired. Like, my spirit is tired. My body is tired. I wake up and I'm like, I can't believe this is the world we live in. Like, this is where I am. This is what I see when I wake up. And I wake up and it's not a dream. This guy is not my brother. He's not my father. He's not my, he's not my relative. But being an empathetic person that I am, if it was the case that this man was related to me, I would burn down everything. So I can certainly understand people who want to set things afire. I can even understand people who want to loot. People have lost their jobs. They've lost their sanity. They've been sitting at home talking to themselves for like 3 months. Oh, what more do you want from people? And then they don't have things and they have an opportunity to go out and get things and loot. Now, for some people who taking a little advantage of it, okay, whatever, they probably wrong, I guess. But for the African-American who has endured this for more than 400 years, y'all already owe us. You already owe us 40 acres and a mule. Let me get mine. So do I care looting? I don't care. I don't care. These people are going to make insurance claims if they can, if they have it. And I mean, for the most part, I would imagine now when people start to burn down their own stores and their own communities, it's theirs. What's the problem there? What's the problem with burning down your own stuff? It's yours. What's the problem with burning down corporations? They got it. Do you think another Target won't open because they burned down Target? No, absolutely not. Do you think Target will not be able to provide because people took everything from it? No, absolutely not. So I really am unmoved by it because for all of the measures that were taken before now that made sense, that made people say, oh, kumbaya, let freedom ring, let's just be peaceful and hope that they get our point.
Didn't work.
Let me give you this example. If you are a customer and you go in and you ask for a refund in a very nice voice, the owner might tell you no. But if you go in and you are irate and you are angry, that owner will want to satisfy you because they want to get you out there as quickly as possible without making a scene. It is sad. It is awful. It is crazy that things had to come to this, but I don't care. I don't care.
Well, I know we're all going to find some disagreeing in this topic, which is why I saved it for last.
I don't care because I am honestly in my spirit. I told you, I can't even watch the video. That is how over it I am.
I understand your frustration. I personally, George Floyd was innocent. Did not deserve that. I don't see harming other innocent people being a proper reaction, though. I'm not going to harm it. Like, let me just jump.
Property. I mean, my goodness.
No, let me tell you what's on my mind right now.
The other night, I got some Gucci belts. Okay, ain't pay for them. Might go shopping again if they kill another man. I'm just saying.
Well, pocketing something is a different story than beating the store owner because they're standing there trying to protect their door. Did you see the video of the lady got beat because she was standing in front of her door asking that they don't, or you say even screaming out, doesn't matter. You're
Oh,
standing there.
I'm glad you bring that
deter.
up, Clay, because let me tell you how great these police officers are. There was a black woman in front of a liquor store trying to help the man send the looters away. The police showed up, and you know what they did? They put the damn black woman in handcuffs and detained her. And she was out there trying to protect property.
Yeah, that's bullshit. It's the same way it's bullshit.
So why would we defend somebody? This is what happens when we try to defend somebody. Okay, this is what happens when we try to stand up for right in this fucked up nation. We get blamed. We still get criminalized. We still end up getting locked up or dead.
Still, we're not gonna. If you don't want to be caught of a crime, don't do a crime. You know what I mean? And I understand.
Okay. So now every black person that got killed was a criminal?
Absolutely not. But if you're on video taking a 2x4 and beating someone, you're a criminal. Does anybody want to argue with that one? That's completely criminal. I wouldn't hit a woman. I wouldn't touch a woman anyway. I'm damn sure not going to stand by and let someone hit her with a board. I wouldn't do it myself.
I'm not saying they was right for doing it, but I don't know. I'm going to do them. I'm going to do to that woman what they do to the innocent black man when they get killed. I'm not saying she deserved to get her ass beat by the board, but what did she do? What was her character like? What did she do in the past? I wonder what she.
He might have a criminal record.
Exactly.
We don't know.
She probably did something. At some point in her life, she did something that deserved her ass to get hit with a board.
Not in that moment. Well, hey, that's the case. Somebody's beat my ass every day because I got an ugly past.
Exactly. But it's not going to happen to you, Clay, because of the color of your skin.
I'm telling you, it's not going to happen anyway because I'm not sitting here doing anything wrong. Somebody's not going to whoop my ass something I did 10 years ago. And if they do, then it's on them.
No, but they'll kill me for sending my car at a red light. Just for being black.
I understand your frustration, but I don't, why aren't you out there looting? Why aren't you out there? If you were in Atlanta right now and they're running in and out of the stores, would you do it?
Me?
Yeah.
Me 10 years ago, yes. Hell yes.
Well, so I'm gonna whoop your ass today for 10 years ago. It's the same point. I'm not gonna justify.
No, what I'm saying is I'm at a different place in my life where I know I have further avenues to fight the man and the system. Okay, I have a tool kit that I can use to fight the system. A lot of these people that are out here looting and rioting, they don't have that. They don't have that ability. They don't have the access. They can't go out and get a lawyer and just sue everybody that has done them wrong.
They're out of mouse tools. They ain't got none.
Exactly.
So your last resort is harming another human being.
I don't think
to get your point. That's what I'm saying. It's not right.
I don't think it's about saying harming other human beings. Obviously, I don't think. Okay, let me rephrase. For myself, I don't think that that's okay. I don't think it's okay to assault people because they just happen to be standing there. However, if you put yourself in a situation where there are riots going on, not peaceful protesters, but riots, you go down there, and try to stab people with a knife. Because are you referring to the lady that was in the wheelchair?
No, I'm referring to the lady who was standing outside of her business door, and just because she was standing there like, hey, don't do this to my store, they attacked her. And one gentleman was hitting her with a 2x4. I mean, really, who has it in you? Sean, I can't picture you at all doing somebody that way. And I don't want to think that you're going to support. You can't support people who are doing that. It's just as malicious.
He's not saying that. That's not even what I was saying. My point.
I'm saying I understand is what I'm saying. I'm not saying
you understand the frustration.
I'm saying I understand.
Yeah, you understand, but we're not. Yeah, we're not going to get to it. Go ahead, Miss Dr. Williams.
Oh, would you run into break up a fight between two MMA fighters?
Nope.
You wouldn't. It's not logical to me that a little old lady, knowing there's looting and rioting going on, is standing in front of her store. That's not why. you should have insurance for one, and two, you should call them when this is over. Like that's like going back to the starting point. Like, why are you there at this time?
Well, I don't agree with her being there. She should have kept her ass out of that environment. Unless she was there to protest, she should not have been standing there and what's going on right now, because she's not open.
Best side if she was standing there saying, "Hey, please don't do this. I'm asking you, please don't do this." She honestly thought she could probably get through.
Are you surely asking somebody nicely not to do something is gonna fix everything? That's just
that works out so well for us black men.
Well, I know, but still,
it really worked.
It comes down to your behavior.
When people are angry, there is nothing you can do to rationalize. Angry, if you are a person that is angry and sees red and nothing else, how do you get that person to be rational unless you get them to first calm down? You can't, like, to go out into a group of people that is clearly angry is.
Oh, it was very unwise for her to be there.
I bet she won't do it again.
The only thing that I've seen that
it's a teachable moment is what it is.
The only thing that I've seen that I'm going to hit on 2 points and then I will hand it over. First, the only thing that I've seen that I can kind of understand is when you're driving on the interstate and all of a sudden there's a bunch of people and they're trying to break in your car and burn your car while you're inside. I'm gonna run you over. I don't care what you out there protest. I'm gonna run you over because I'm not gonna die sitting in my car when I'm just trying to go home from the interstate. Sorry, but I'm not. Two, I think that it's important that we're talking about this, but I also think that the focus needs to be on not the effect, but the catalyst to what's been happening. Is everybody going to talk about riots and people breaking in places and burning stuff? Yeah, but why are we there? Why is that happening? And if you can't talk about why it is happening and you can't engage in a conversation on why it is happening, then I want people to have a seat, because you cannot fix it if you cannot acknowledge it. You cannot fix it if you can't address why it's happening.
We address why it's happening.
They took a knee and nobody listened. It's happening because we've asked over and over and over again. People of color are being persecuted, victimized, racial profile, everything, and murdered in the street. And we are asked peacefully, quietly, hand in hand, saying kumbaya, like the good doctor here said, and it didn't work. Drew Brees, the football player, said it wasn't the time or the place. Okay, well, when is the time and the place? Because we've tried every avenue and it's not worked.
It's just
I'm
not
done.
Right. And all right, well, Martin Luther King's niece said it very well in an interview just a few days ago. You said everyone is screaming, no justice, no peace. And then they need to reverse that. No peace, no justice.
Well, that's funny because Martin Luther King himself said a riot is the language of the unheard.
He didn't say anything about, he said a riot. You can riot without harming other people, without beating people down, right? I mean, like you said, it's escalated to a point where people are hot and they need to calm down. But I don't care. It's still my choice whether or not to swing on a person. And I'm either right or I'm wrong by doing so. I don't care how angry I am. I'll go down if I act too extreme. Now
there's two things. There's two issues here. You're putting them together. Okay. Are we talking about the destruction of property? Are we talking about physical abuse to innocent people?
Yes.
Okay.
Harming a person.
Okay.
Directly swinging on an innocent person.
Okay. I've seen you have a problem with that, huh?
Absolutely.
I have a problem.
I know where you're going with that, Bashar.
I know where you're going.
I have a problem with people getting killed. I have a problem with life being snuffed out of somebody's body for no other reason but the fact that they got melanin in their goddamn skin.
You should have a problem with it. I have a problem with it. Dr. Williams said a little while ago, she saw it, heard about the incident, and her thought was, again, another black guy. I had the same thought. See what I mean? We all should have that first thought. Because my thought was, this stupid idiot is doing it. Haven't we gone through this? Haven't we already declared that this is unacceptable? You know, like,
No, because there's been no accountability.
that's my
for
thought.
All these other times that it's happened, there's been no accountability. So no, we haven't arrived at a time where, or where people should be.
Oh, I didn't say it was resolved. That was just my issue. We've done this enough. We should have.
I wish society in this country as a whole would feel as concerned about a black man's life as they do about some little old white lady getting her ass hit upside the head with a board. That's all I'm saying.
I've seen women of color in that same situation getting beat down for trying to defend. I just can't believe you would take yourself to harm, just to hit and attack someone just because under these conditions you get away with it.
I'm not saying it's right to beat on somebody with a board or no shit like that. What I'm saying is it's right to burn down a city. It's right to burn this country down and rebuild it from the ashes. Sherman said it best when he burnt Atlanta. It's time to make the South howl. They will hate what they did, and we're gonna make them feel. We're gonna make them feel it.
I still think there's a better way.
Well, we try to. We like Andy said, we try other things.
I get the frustration. Go ahead.
Dr. Williams said a while ago, and I don't disagree. If it was my family member, my brother, my father, somebody, I would absolutely want to go burn something down. But I'm a bit more. Even in anger, I'm a bit more targeted. I wouldn't go out and indiscriminately burn down. I would target the specific thing that was responsible for it. So, I don't really think it was necessary. I understood more the attacks and protests on the police stations than I did on the private businesses in the neighborhood that had nothing to do with any of it.
The owners of some of these businesses are in support of protest. You see what I mean? It's just
the owners of some of these businesses are also racist assholes that take advantage of the black dollar. They go and they put their stores and their businesses in these poor black communities. They overcharge people. They take advantage because black people don't have the transportation to go to the good side of town and buy a loaf of bread that's where it's $1 cheaper. They have to walk to the corner store where somebody, I'm not even going to say, oh yeah, I'm going to say it. They ain't black. It's been owned by somebody of a different race. They treat black people like shit when they come in their store, and they follow them around. They have really bad customer service, if they have customer service at all. And the minute somebody says, hey, let's burn down the liquor store on the corner, I want to say, I remember that time he accused me of stealing. I'm burning his ass. I'm burning his shit down. But so you see, it's not just innocent.
I understand your frustration there. And I would understand if it was just targeting those businesses, but it's not. It's also the black-owned businesses of your neighbor that's getting burned down, who doesn't have insurance because he spent his life savings to open his bar or his store or whatever else.
Actually, I want to address that point. One of the things that we've seen during all of this rioting is in Atlanta in particular, there is an area that, was owned by lots of black people, especially black women, and all of that got destroyed and looted and burned. But the thing is, from what we've learned now, it was not by the protesters. A lot of it was white people. You see time and time again, the man that burned down the courthouse in Nashville, Tennessee, white man, not even from Nashville. So what you're seeing is what people want you to see, with the craziness is happening, but a lot of times it's not even being perpetrated by those people that are in support of this protest. It's being perpetrated by people from out of town, a lot of white people, but that's not what you're seeing. It's all these black people or people of color burning stuff down, when in reality that's not entirely what's happening. So again, getting blamed for something that's not even your fault.
I've seen videos of the white agitators coming in, claiming to be allies, escalating things, starting the rioting. But I've also seen videos of, there's the man up in, I think it was either Detroit or Minneapolis, who had opened a bar. And he's got video footage of black men coming into his business, smashing up his bar, trying to take his safe and drag it out. And he's pleading with him, look, I'm your neighbor. I'm here. I'm part of your community. Why are you doing this to me? I'm with you. And, and there's just so much stuff coming from so many different directions. And everybody's just, to me, I get it. People are frustrated, but you got to target that frustration. Like I said, if you're angry at something and you feel like burning something down, at least target the entity that you view as responsible for it.
And I'm going to say this and then I'll shut up and I'll let the good doctor speak. But and I say this with all due respect, but I want you to understand like how it sounds. And I'm by no means a Black person. I am a woman of color, but our struggle is not the same. But to hear you say, I understand, but well, firstly, you don't entirely understand, because you can't possibly understand a frustration that you have not experienced. Two, if you really understood, there would be no, well, I understand, but there's no but in that. It's either you understand or you don't.
There is a but, because there is right and wrong, and two wrongs
Did
don't
not hear what I just said. Like, so you don't understand.
I'm disagreeing. There is a but. The two things can be true at the same time. You can say, look, this was wrong, but doing this over here is not right.
And I want to say, I understand being kind to humanity and caring for your fellow brother. I understand that perspective, but my personal feeling and my personal belief is I have no cares left to give. I mean, you know, when you wake up, watch the news, look to Facebook, look to Instagram, and literally, what was the span of these 3 deaths? What was the span of it? Was it 2 weeks? Was it 1 week?
1 week.
1 week, 3 people, 3. And how do you care? How do you care that things are happening to other people when you don't even know if you have the right to live? Like, how do I care? I don't have any children right now, God forbid. But people that are making plans to have children, Black people, have to consider, is this the type of world that I want to raise my children in? Do I even want to have children, for that matter? Like, can you imagine? So to think about somebody being at a disadvantage because their buildings burned down, blah, 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 whatever. I mean, I get the lack of humanity there, but also from my perspective, I just don't care. Because when I cared, it was never addressed. And even for the people who are wrong, I don't care. Because there was a time when all of this could have been smoothed out, all of this could have been addressed and appeased, and it wasn't. And we never would have even been here. We wouldn't have. But how many deaths? Death after death after death after death. How many? How many?
I understand. And I'm going to call you out on something right here.
Right.
You say you don't care. I know you care. Let me tell you, I can tell by speaking with you, you're one of the, you've got a characteristic about you that you're one of the really good persons to me that I like to speak with, talk with, mentor with, whatever. You care. You wouldn't be on this show if you didn't. I know you have a goal, and I understand you want to say you don't care. I feel that way. Like I said, Annie said, I may not understand entirely, and I get that. How could I? I get that. Okay. But to the nth degree, there's no way I'm going to believe that you do not care, because I can tell you're such a great person in speaking. I know you have that deep down care. And what I want to build on.
Care about the people.
Oh, yeah, I see.
About the people.
Yeah.
But it is the fact that I don't care that people are expressing themselves in a way that's less than favorable, because there were things that could have prevented that. There were actions that could have been taken that could have prevented people from expressing themselves in ways that are less than favorable.
Yeah. And yeah, we got to this point because of wrongdoing. When it comes to right and wrong, I'm not going to go spiritual on everyone, but when I read the Bible, it doesn't say it's okay as long as you're doing it in the name of this. If it's wrong, it's wrong. If I
Peter
put my
had
hands,
a sword, Clay.
Of course, he had a sword, but that doesn't mean that
another thing,
he didn't target innocent people and stab them with it.
Two wrongs make a right, but it damn sure make shit even.
Well, when you do something in God's eyes, it's right or wrong, right? I mean, and if even if the circumstances about, let me get really personal with it. When my 19-day-old daughter died, and then I later learned it was negligence, you imagine how many hospitals I wanted to burn down? There's no amount of real estate out there burn down, bring my baby back. But it's my choice not to do it. I'm not harming. I am not beating up on nurses. I'm not going to do that because my God says no. You just should not harm someone. And I mean, you tell me it's any different from George Floyd. I would love to strangle the few people that I know was involved, and they failed me. They failed my daughter. But that doesn't mean I'm going to do it. I have to say no because I have to be better. Otherwise, I'm just as negligent. I cannot do that.
One of the things that I thought about a couple years ago, there was somebody from our town in Americus who posted something using derogatory slang. She was a young white girl, and people they wanted to hunt the girl down, and I understood that way. I got that. However, I implored people to people that I knew, just said, listen, she's wrong, but I wanted people to understand at that time that we wanted to give her the benefit of the doubt that I wish I had been given, as somebody as a person of color. Oftentimes I think, I want you to give me the benefit of the doubt. I want you to not look at me and think, XYZ about me just because I'm not white. And I wanted, the same thing for her. Because I wanted to be the better person and to think of how I would like to be treated. And to some degree, I still think that that's how we should approach some situations. At the same time, though, the doctor's right. Like, I care about the lives of people, and I care about innocent people that are getting caught up in this, but I don't care about Target. I don't care about AutoZone. They'll be okay. You know who won't be okay? George Floyd. All the other people that have been murdered, they're not going to be okay. And what about the people that have yet to be murdered? Because it's not fixed itself. That's what I mean. Honestly, nothing we can do is going to bring George Floyd back to his family. The goal is to hold officers accountable so that this does not happen again. So that if it does, they know what's going to happen. They know that they are going to jail. There is no pass anymore. We're not asking for more than. And one of the things that I was thinking about when I was thinking about this episode tonight is, we often hear, that we want justice, we want equality, and it's not a pie. Well, it kind of has been a pie over the last, since the inception of our country, it has been a pie. And there have been people that have been on the haves end of that who have been eating more than their share of the pie. And for us to get our equal share of said pie, they're going to have to give a little bit of theirs up. And they don't want to do that. So that's where we have the problem. And it's all come to this. And now that we are demanding our piece of the pie to make it fair and equal, it's going to have to come out of their mouth, and they don't like it.
I agree with that. And I like the way you put it in the slice of a pie, equality. But let me ask this question. What is where do we go from here? What do you see? Anyone can speak up. What do you see happening next with where we are right now? Are we going to continue to protest every day? I mean, what the media reported that New York Times of all people put out, you want this looting to stop, then tell the police to stop or whatever. We can't, within our control, what's going to happen next?
Well, Clay, we were gonna stop protesting, and because all us black people, we talk to each other. We got our own little
You got a big
Social
meeting.
network.
It's telepathy now,
yeah,
right?
Yeah, telepathy. Yeah. So we got together last night and we said, well, we're gonna stop this looting, this rioting. But then every time we get ready to do right, one of them white people kill us again. And we said, well, goddamn, I was gonna stop this tomorrow.
The evil
Somebody
all
else don't end up dead.
all around.
Believe me, and as a white person,
We tired of falling for the banana in the tailpipe play.
I get, believe, hey, look, as a white person, I can sit here and tell you, I'm tired of it too. You know, I mean, I'm not even separating myself by color right now. As a person to another person, I'm tired of this senseless killing. And the fact that we're talking about it being racial is because this was a dumbass white guy that decided he was going to behave that way. That does not represent me. It doesn't represent, you know, so many white
You tired
people.
of people getting killed? I'm tired of waking up with a target on my back every morning.
And to fix that, we're going to have to go deep. You're absolutely right. Because this, and it comes down to what I was saying earlier, accountability for your own damn actions. You know, if everyone, let's just say run that hypothetical, if everyone, cops included, started holding themselves accountable for what's right and wrong, then no, they wouldn't have this issue and they wouldn't be thinking like that. So they need to correct their damn thoughts. You know what I mean? You can control your thoughts. I've had that conversation on another episode. You know, you're not responsible for thought one, but thought two. For Chauvin, thought two was, I'm still going to kill this black guy. He should have done that. And how do you correct that? You have to practice. You have to put it. He has to have an experience like no other to change. And, well, he's going to spend the rest of his thoughts time in the prison. You know, if any of us have anything to do with it, that's where he'll be. You know, I mean, it's so sad that that first thought pops up, racist, but at least correct it on your second thought. You know, that makes sense to you? You have to practice good behavior or you're never going to start behaving good. It's practice. You know, what do we, anybody, I know that sounds like the wrong answer to an immediate effect, but we have to correct people's thought, what they think and how they do it. And that's not an easy thing to do, which is what pisses me off, because now we're looking at, you know, it's not going to be an instant fix. It has to happen, but a timeline on it that's per person. That makes sense to you? Like, you know, being raised in the South, and I'm not sure, you know, how you or Anthony, right? But as a guy growing up in the South, yeah, it's slower to evolve to that, it seems, and it's the last place. You know, sometimes I can just say I'm from the South, and someone will pop in their head that I might be racist just because I still live here. You know, it's sad that it becomes that way, but yeah, in the South, we have to try harder. You know, we have to try as hard as anyone. Yeah, but we have to try much harder to get out of that. You know what I mean? And which I never was in it. I don't think that way at all. But I just see it so much, so I can imagine this is why they think, and why they haven't gotten out of it is their own damn fault, because they have failed to change their mind. My opinion. It's a failure. It's a failure at the individual level.
I agree. It's an individual level. I mean, it hurts me to hear Sean feel like he's got a target, and I can see why he feels that way. Every time we turn around, it seems like there's something else getting wall-to-wall coverage. But the reality is you shouldn't feel that way. The actual numbers don't support you feeling that way. I mean, when you look at the vast majority of all police interactions, right? If you think about it, there's millions of police interactions that happen a day, right?
Mm-hmm.
Which, you know, added up over the course of the year, there's hundreds of millions. And most of those end fair enough, right? The vast majority of them end fair enough. They end with a peaceful resolution. Everybody goes home. Most of them end up without even anybody getting arrested, or even a citation or a ticket. And like I said, I understand the optics. I can see the optics, and it's you're right. I'm tired of it. It's exhausting. to wake up and feel like, oh, this has happened again. But then when you take a step back, and I blame the media to an extent for funneling this narrative so much, I don't see anybody couldn't feel this way. But for example, last year, in 2019, 236 Black people were killed by the police. Okay, and that's not even going into each individual case on whether they were armed or not, or they were not armed, or whether they were shooting at an officer and it was actually legit defense or anything like that. And I'm sure a certain number of those may have had some racial undertones to them. Some of them didn't. But in the grand scheme, in the overall number, we're talking about less than 0.0000001% of all police interactions that had this outcome, right? And that's not to downplay the individual interactions. Each time it happens, it's a tragedy. Anytime somebody's life is lost, it's a tragedy. It's terrible. And we should hold each individual situation accountable. But the reality is you don't have a target on your back, Sean, and you shouldn't feel that way. And it hurts my heart that you do feel that way.
I have a condition. I am melaninly challenged. As long as I walk out my door, and I said this on the other show, no matter what I've done in my life, or what I've accomplished, or what I've gathered, or what I've achieved, when I go back home and I walk in a store, they don't see my character. I'm just another no good nigga to them, and they don't give a fuck about my life.
I would like to interrupt for just a moment to address what Anthony said. And I'm so glad that you brought up the numbers, because I actually have some numbers of my own. So in 2019, 370 white men were killed by the police. That is awful, right? Whereas 235 were African American and 158 were Hispanic. And now listening to those numbers, you would think that, like, oh my gosh, there's more white people killed by police than Black people. And Hispanic people. So like we're not justified in feeling that way, right? Well, that sounds great until you realize that actually white people make up 76.5% of the population. And so Black people make up 13.4% of the population, and Hispanic people make up 18.3% of the population. So doing some quick math, and please feel free to check me on it. So like, for example, out of 10 people, 10 white people, one of them will be shot by the police. Out of 10 Black people, 5 of them will be shot by the police. And out of 10 Hispanic people, 4 of them will be shot by the police. So we are being killed at a drastically disproportionate number to our population and our demographic. So I don't accept the fact that we're not targets, because our math simply says that we are. And that's just by the numbers. And if we want to talk about armed people versus unarmed people, 1.3, I think it's 1.3 or 1.5 of them were actually unarmed. So let's talk numbers if you want to, but it's not going to matter when you want to talk numbers, that's fine, but the numbers just don't support the fact that we are not killed at a drastically disproportionate rate to white people. This is just not there. But also, you can't discount feelings. Just because you don't think that that's a thing does not invalidate Mashawn's feelings or my feelings. Because the simple fact of the matter is, if your interaction with the police, you have a far greater outcome than I may have, simply based on the numbers.
So I actually want to touch on something you just said based on your interaction with the police. So you compared those numbers to the overall entire population of the US. So let me compare that to a different situation. Let's say we were looking at survivability rate of COVID-19, right? Are we going to say, well, this number of people died, and then we're going to compare that to the entire population of people who didn't have COVID-19 and say, well, that was the survivability rate? Or are we going to take the number of people that died from COVID-19 and compare that to the total number of people who actually had COVID-19 and then say that was a survivability rate?
I'm sorry. I'm just trying to process. You're comparing the number of people that are killed by police to a pandemic. Does that not
is what I'm pointing
for you?
What I'm pointing out is how that number should be calculated. Okay, so you don't
calculated by the. Okay, I'm gonna let you.
Can I interject here?
Well, let me finish. Then I'll hear what you're saying.
Okay. Please finish your.
You don't calculate the survivability rate of a pandemic or a disease or anything else based on the entire healthy population. You do it based on the population that was actually infected. So with the police numbers, you don't compare that to the entire population of the US. You compare that to the number of population that actually encountered the police.
Oh, so you mean like the people that were lucky enough to survive those encounters? Is that what you're saying?
No, yes. You compare it to the total number of people who actually had an encounter with the police versus the number of people who didn't survive. And that's what you look at. And if you look at those numbers, for example, in 2018, 2,800, a little over 2,800 people who were killed by a Black person. 3,000 people who were killed by a white person. Now, when we look at the racial, like white versus Black, Black versus white, 514 of those that were white were murdered by a Black person, and 234 who were Black were murdered by a white person. For both cases, it was almost identical as far as who killed themselves, right? As far as white on white, Black on Black, is both identical. So even when you look at that, there's not, in my opinion, there's not even a disparity of a pandemic of Black people killing white people or even white people killing Black people. It's just the number is not that big. Now, when it happens, it's tragic, it's painful, and it should be dealt with, and especially if it's done because of race. But every time it happens isn't because of race. Do you understand what I'm saying?
To some degree, I think I understand what you're trying to say. Now, you shifted from the numbers that I have given you. Why do you think that is? Why do you? So either you think that the numbers are not correct, and then I would have to direct you to, the government websites that I pulled that information from. But also, either you think that it's not correct, or you think that it's correct and that it's deserving, because is it that you think that Black people or Hispanic people or people of color are more prone to break the law or be involved in police encounters? I'm just trying to figure out why you would dismiss that information.
Well, yes, exactly. So statistically.
Oh. Okay, I just want to back up to make sure that I'm understanding you correctly.
Well,
is it your position? Is it your position? Excuse me?
The facts are statistically that in the past, Black and people of color are responsible for a higher rate of crime than the white people compared to their population.
Okay, so I just want to be very clear about what you're saying. Is it your position that people of color are at a higher rate of breaking the law? Just do you think it's like genetic? Like why would you feel that way? Like, is there, think about our history and how everything has come about, and think about like why you think that might be the case.
So you're extrapolating something out of what I've said. That's not what I'm saying.
No, I asked you like pretty point blank, like,
I'm not saying
what you feel.
I'm not saying that I feel like if I run into a person of color, that person's going to have a higher chance of doing anything to me or committing a crime. What I am saying is that historically, on the numbers, people of color are responsible for crime at a very high rate compared to their makeup of the overall population. As a result of that, they encounter the police at a much higher rate compared to, so people of color don't encounter the police as 14 or 17% of all encounters. It's a higher encounter rate.
Okay. Well, since I am not a degree holding person, I will turn that over to the good doctor there. Because I feel like maybe
what happened with Clay's camera?
I dropped and I was getting into it. keep going. I will be back.
Oh God, you all unpack so much stuff.
I lost my camera. Keep going. I get it. Besides all the math, get down to the logic behind it. What do you think? Are we thinking that, I mean, I'm not saying we like inclusive. I'm just trying to sum up what's the conversation. Are we thinking that it might be said that the people of race are more likely to?
I think that if I'm gonna put it out there, and then I will shut up and I will let this doctor speak. But I think that if we are going to say things that are so just incredibly ignorant that we are maybe genetically predisposed to crime, or because we are this way that, you know, we're of color, we're at a higher rate to commit crimes. If that's the logic behind, if that is your only logic, and you can't think of, if you can't think of anything else, then we're one step away. You might as well just put on your hood and call it a day.
That's not what I said. I didn't say
that is exactly what you said. I even asked you twice just to be sure that I was not misunderstanding what you were saying. But the reason, in case you don't know, the reason that people of color are at a higher rate is systemic racism, the way that the laws have been set up so that people of color are at a higher rate, and the privilege that you walk around with every day that's on the outside of your body also plays a very big part in why white people are not held to the same standards that other people are. We go to jail and are killed for the same things you get a ticket for, honey. And if you can't realize that and like understand that that's where we're coming from, then we have nothing. I mean, there's nothing else to talk about.
So you're saying the system is biased towards white people?
Talk to any attorney and they can tell you that.
Y'all touched on so many things. I don't even know where to start.
Well, I like the system, you know, and its bias, because I'm in agreement with that, you know, regardless of the color of my skin. I agree with, because the system definitely allows for more white people to get away or not even be encountered. Yeah, and that may come down, if you want. I still like to go back to individualism. That definitely goes down to the individual police officer decision to encounter that person at that time. You're doing a crime, if you're gonna not, in other words, if you see the same crime by any type race, you should have the same response to encounter. And you're saying that it's the numbers are way flared up on colored people, will say, because of the officer chose. I mean, we're saying the officer chose not to confront the white person, and I get that, because I've seen it, I understand it. You know, so yeah, there are going to be more encounters because that officer is going to encounter them.
It's people of color, not colored people. You don't say that anymore. This ain't the.
Say it again. I was
colored.
Clay, you can't say colored.
My camera fell down. I'm all shook up. You obviously know I got energy going. Okay.
That I was kind of talking about. So I agree that people of color, Black and Hispanic, encounter cops at a much higher rate than white people do. Okay. I'm not disputing that. That's a fact. It's statistically proven in the numbers. But what I'm saying is, during those encounters, white people, when they do encounter the cops, are at a higher rate of being killed than any other group. If you're only counting the people who actually encountered the cops. Do you understand what I'm saying?
No.
That doesn't, you're not computing
Can I
that.
say something?
Yes, go ahead.
Please.
Go ahead, Dr. Williams.
So again, you all have unpacked so many things that I don't know where to start. But I would like to start with what Sean said. He feels like there's a target on his back. Perception is 100% reality. However you perceive something is what it is. Even if you say that you don't perceive the world to be that way, that doesn't mean it's not true for Sean. So I do want to start there.
Let's do that. Let's go around the house with that thought. Sean, you started it. Obviously, I know how you feel. You expressed it. Annie, do you feel the same for Sean? Do you understand that feeling of a target?
Oh yeah,
You understand
absolutely.
that for him? Okay. And then Anthony, you understand what he's saying he feels?
I do. Since I'm not allowed to understand, I get why you feel that way. And I get that your perception is your reality. And yes, absolutely. One's perception is that person's reality. Absolutely. I respect that. And that's what I was saying is, it's not that it bothers me. I'm trying to word this right way without it sounding bad, but it's not that it bothers me that you're I'm not trying to say you're not allowed to have that perception. I'm saying it hurts my heart that you have that perception. And what I'm saying is, I don't feel like, all right, let me compare it to like my son. My son has this perception and terrible fear that somebody is going to break into his room and steal him in the middle of the night. He comes into my room probably every second or third night crying, "Dad, can I sleep with you?" "Why, son?" "I'm just terrified. I think somebody's going to break in my room and steal me." Okay. That is his perception, and that is his reality right now. But it's not likely to happen. Do you understand what I'm saying? So yes, I get your perception, but when you really break down the percentage of overall, like it's really like less than a 0.0001% chance to happen.
Well, I don't mean to be the bearer of bad news. Y'all can throw those numbers in the garbage.
Yeah, they're not going to contain. Yeah,
and
it doesn't have reality built into those numbers.
But she knows a little bit about statistics.
And the reason I say that those numbers can be thrown in the garbage, surveys, any number you get by survey is biased. Any one of them. It's not true. It's biased. You get it from a sample. You don't get it from the entire population. It's going to be biased. Yeah. It is. That's first and foremost. Secondly,
I understand that.
Secondly, as far as it relates to the African American male's experience with the police, you do not know the number of friends, my brother, my father, my students who experience, even if they aren't arrested, who experience the police in a way that is threatening, that is negative, that seems like it could go awry. And these are stories, these are anecdotal, right? And so it's hard to believe anecdotes because you don't have the hardcore numbers, but numbers come from people's reports. And it depends on who's reporting, like who's reporting what you read, right? And so who's surveying my students? Who is surveying them? Asking them, how many times have you been erroneously approached by? Nobody ain't asking them that. Nobody's asking them that. So the numbers that represent the people don't even really represent the people. You know, they don't.
I get that completely. That makes perfect sense because you're right. You're absolutely right.
You have to think that's about the information that you receive. You know what I mean? And those numbers will have you to believe that nobody's messing with them. Ain't nobody killing them like they saying. What's up? Why they saying this? And when there are millions of people on the street right now that are telling you, I got effed with by the police. Like literally, this is an experience. on my timeline. You wouldn't believe the number of people coming out with these anecdotes about how the police bothered them and they felt helpless. It wasn't a formal arrest, so it wasn't recorded. Yep. It wasn't that they had got sentenced or committed a crime. There was this one guy that was literally broke up this guy from beating on his girlfriend, went around the corner, and police came to find him and put him in handcuffs. Not the guy that was beating his girlfriend. They didn't arrest him, so that wouldn't be on record. But they handcuffed him. He was harassed. That is an experience that wouldn't be accounted for in the data that you see.
How many times have you fit the description, Anthony?
I've actually been there. Believe it or not, people don't believe me, but I actually
believe you. If you say it, perception is 100% reality. I believe you. I do.
So I do want to get to what you were saying. So I was only talking about deaths by police. Okay, and that's okay. One.
I get that.
And then, what I was talking about there is when you look at the deaths by police, and you compare it to overall interactions with the cops, white people in those interactions and the numbers, and these aren't survey numbers, these are actual FBI statistics, and even those are. And I want to acknowledge that even the FBI statistics are slightly incomplete, and they say that, but the knowing how statistics work, the pattern should remain generally the same unless there is just a tremendous amount of data that's not included with those statistics. When you look at those statistics, a white person is about 1.3 times more likely to be shot and killed during a police interaction than anybody else. Now, over what you were talking about, I absolutely agree. Black neighborhoods and non-white neighborhoods have a extremely high presence of police there. And I absolutely do believe that Black people are addressed and encountered by the police much more than white people are. Not disputing that at all. And I'm just looking at those as two different issues. And I know that for people of that community, it's just one issue. I get that. But I don't want you fearing for your life if you don't need to. I just don't want the extra anxiety for my friend Sean.
I get that.
I drink about it. I'm good.
And it also does happen, not to the same degree, but it also does happen to some white neighborhoods as well. And it's an economic issue for them.
Economic issue, yes.
So if you go to,
but there's that added layer that comes with skin color, because the economic issue is layered with skin color, because economically there are more people in economically disenfranchised areas.
You beat me to it.
Boom. Boom. Well, yeah. Well, that's. I'm glad we brought that to clarity.
I think that, like, I wanted to talk about, but why is that the way that it is? And if we can address why that is the way that it is, then we can start to make some progress. Because
48 and a mule. I tried to tell you that.
Yeah, it definitely dates back. Sean and I talked about this, and we talked about generations moving forward, since the actual civil rights movement. And no, it is still not
prior to the civil rights movement.
Well, even prior, but
Reconstruction is
there
where
you
it
go.
started.
Yeah, but no, it's still not there. Absolutely not. I mean, we're far from it.
And now I hate to use this analogy because it's probably not the best time to use it. When you have, being from Georgia, we know a little bit about farming, and when you grow a crop and one of the things that farmers do when they want to turn the soil, or they want to do, what do they do with it?
Mm-hmm.
They burn it. And then it comes back fresh, and it comes back better than it was from the last crop rotation. So I'm not saying that that we should burn it, burn everything down, but metaphorically, I think we need to start burning stuff. Metaphorically, before my mama calls me and says, you said we ought to burn stuff. It's not what I'm saying. Metaphorically, I think it's time to burn it down and start over, because the system that we had was built, it's kind of like kindergarten. You know, you go to kindergarten and first grade and second grade, and they all kind of build on each other. But now we're in high school, so to speak, in our country. And you know, we've built on this foundation of oppression. We've built on the foundation of socioeconomic disenfranchising people. We've built on this, you know, layer after layer. And it's time we need to reevaluate how we did that, because we can't continue to go forward and expect it to get any better when we continue to oppress people and we continue to allow the system to manipulate the numbers, or we allow the system to continue to keep people down.
No matter how you look at it, it's going to go all the way back to that root where it has to be fixed.
Well, that's where we started. That's where it started to get built upon.
So I just wanted to pose a question. So metaphorically speaking, like what does 40 acres and a mule look like today? Right?
Reparations.
Well, I was actually just about to say, I don't think a lump sum of money given to everybody is going to solve their problems. It's going to make everybody feel good for a little while, but you're going to find all right. So look at,
it's a good place to start.
Look at people that win the lottery, right? If you look at those stories that people win the lottery, and then I'm talking about not even just like a small lottery, like the $100 million lottery, they're broken right back where they were a few years later. So
I have an answer for you.
Yeah, go ahead.
I think that it needs to a very small, like just to jump us off and get us started here. I think that we need to look at education. I think that we need to look at small business loans. I think it needs to be easier for people to get housing loans. I think that there are things to move people up that could come in the form of reparations.
Mm-hmm.
Because if you look at our history and the way that we have treated people of color, and to boxing them into certain neighborhoods, being unable to get loans to live in other neighborhoods, or to start businesses, or to do all these things, they were denied, or they were kept from doing just simply because it was legal at the time. Those are things we need to fix. Those are things that we can look at and say, okay, this is the cause of maybe this generations of people living in poverty. Well, maybe because we denied them a proper education, maybe because we made them go to the schools without the books, maybe we made them go to schools that didn't even have floors. But maybe that's why. I mean, I'm not like by any means like, you know, an expert, but you know, even I can see that.
It's definitely
I agree
systematic.
with that. I was gonna say, in my opinion, the best chance of success would look like exactly like what you said, Anna. It's an economic lift up, you know,
Mm-hmm.
through education, through, like you said, making it easier for people in these communities to get the business loan, start their own business, get the home loan. Like you said, that's to me what reparations would look like.
You see, the thing about reparations is it's more than just one big check. But I'm going to let Dr. Williams chime in on this, because I'm going to start getting into a little bit of the economy and the system. Because you see, if you give somebody a check and that's all you give them, then they're going to be spending their money in a system that is still systematically designed to keep them oppressed. So reparations is that's why I say when you say a big check, I said that's a good place to start. If you think giving people money is not going to help their situation, then we want to just got that big stimulus check. How many people got a stimulus check?
Well, everybody.
All right, then. Did y'all turn it down?
Nope.
All right.
No fool.
Dr. Williams, you want to jump in and talk about the system and the economy and how reparations and changing the system
I like the idea of changing the wealth portfolio of people, because you can't spend wealth. You can't spend education. You can use it, which people need that credit. People need that um, human capital investment. People need those things. But in terms of the systematic oppression, when we think about, so the other day, me and one of my friends, we sat down and we went through the amendments. I don't know why we did this. I don't know why. It was random. And she's a nerd. I told her that. But we went and we sat down and we went through the amendments. And this is why representation is so, diverse representation is so important, right? When you are a white man, you can only think as a white man. It is hard. Now you can probably empathize, sympathize, even get a very close approximation to what it feels like to be a Black woman. But it's so many degrees of freedom that you actually probably need a Black woman to give you her perspective on that particular issue. Mm-hmm. Now, the reason I say that is when you look at the amendments even to the Constitution that was originally written, when you look at the amendments even, to what degree was that amendment written with a Black woman in mind? Not the Constitution, not the original document, but even an amendment to it.
Yep.
To what degree was that with a Black woman in mind? And so we went through the first. The first one is the first one is freedom of speech. The second is the right to bear arms. The fourth or fifth or third or something or other is right to a trial by jury and all these kind of things. But whose rights were these amendments put in place to protect? Right? First Amendment, I say what I want to say, but who gets to say what they want to say? Second Amendment, if you don't like it, I can shoot you. Well, maybe not. That's maybe extreme for the Second Amendment, right? But you get the point, right?
Mm-hmm. You have the means to do it.
Right.
You have the means to do it.
I have the means to do it, right?
Those two together, the way it looks like to me is like, I have the right to say what I want to say. And if you don't want to let me say what I want to say, I have the right to defend saying what I want to say.
I have the right to defend it. But and that goes back to what we said at the beginning of this conversation. Some things that happen in theory, the way that they, we think things will happen one way, and then in practice they don't. And the reason they don't happen that way in practice is because there was not somebody there to say, yeah, but in this community, when this woman tries to speak to that issue, she's not heard. Or in this community, when this Latina tries to speak to that issue, nobody understands. And so you have the right to say what you want to say, but because you don't understand what I have to say is not valid, and now you have the right to bear arms.
Got it. I'm following you with this because I see it.
And so in essence, what I'm saying is with the, and that's just a small example of the systematic oppression. There are so many things that have to change. When people say what's next, I don't even know where to start. I don't even know. All I do know is that people have to be open and receptive to the fact that whatever they were thinking could be wrong. And that is so hard for so many people to admit.
At an individual level, you know what I mean? Everybody. And that's why I keep harping on that about training your own mind. Because, I don't care how many policies or, how much government intervention, you're not going to force someone to change their mind. They have to practice that. It's, I don't know, even to the Fourth Amendment, like supporting what you were saying, it gave voting rights to Black men. It still excluded women until another amendment. And so, like you said, without the proper representation, you know what I mean? Without the proper representation there for the writing of that amendment, they're going to exclude, you know, unless that representative is there. So that makes perfect sense. How, if we talk about moving forward, how do you feel? Let's just use the reparations as a good example. How do you feel if reparation checks come out? How do you feel they should be dispersed? I'm not talking stipulations. I'm talking about with the support of education and the support of everything as well. Because, you know, if you ask most people, let's say if you ask people that have the criminal mindset, what are they going to do with that check? What do you think what do you think their plan with that check would be? I'm just asking for myself.
They should be able to do anything they want to with it, Clay.
They should be able to do exactly. That's what I'm getting
talked
at.
About structural adjustment programs on the previous show. So I'm not going to go into that with the stipulations on how the government would tell you.
I'm not putting stipulations on it. What I'm trying to say is each individual needs to be educated to a certain level so that they can have at least the knowledge to do with it what they can do to best suit themselves and to grow their family's wealth.
I think the first thing we should do is student loan forgiveness.
For everyone, or just, I mean, for student loan forgiveness?
No, you white, you can pay your loans. I'm talking about.
You saw
Ask
me.
My lender.
No, I don't come from money, dude.
You know, but you know, and that gets to be tough. It's
white wealth. Okay, leave me alone.
You got a GI Bill though.
Yeah, I had to go somewhere I didn't want to go for that.
That's what she said.
Hey,
interesting. Say that again, Andy. I lost your audio a little bit.
I said that GI Bill is pretty sweet. Okay.
That's right. She knows as well. But, you know, but circling back around really to, you know, I was the only one that didn't answer about, you know, you feeling like you have a target on your back. Yeah. You know, I'm going to say this clearly. I don't understand. I understand for you, but I don't understand personally. And that's what bothers me, is that because we have different, you call it melatonin challenge. That's what hurts me, because
not melatonin. I don't have a problem sleeping. I have a problem with my credit. It's melanin challenged.
Melanin challenged. I didn't realize I said it wrong. But you know, I hate it.
Melanin rich.
Well, that's technical, but it's correct. But regardless, you know, and I've told you this, and even in previous show, I tell you this, even when we're just on the phone or we're in person, it bothers me. But I'm gonna tell you, you're right. You know, you're absolutely right. Is that you feel that way because it exists. There's no denying, you know. And the best way I can tell you that how I try to empathize them, I guess, is, you know, when you and I were running buddies, especially, you would go to me where it's a predominantly white setting, and I would do the same in a predominantly black setting. And I felt like that oddball. Now, I was comfortable being there with you, but I just, you know, I mean, honestly, I couldn't shake that looking over my back feeling. And if I didn't like it, we'll say. I knew I was not a threat, and I knew that, you know, we were all there, but still, that doesn't mean because they all seem to like me here, or, you know, I'm with Sean, they would never touch me or anything like that. Regardless, that feeling was still there, right? And that's the way I try to think. If that's the way you feel on a daily basis, then it just hurts. It hurts. Now, do I have an answer for it? No, that goes back to what we're talking about and what we're trying to resolve. But I'm not going to sit here and tell you shouldn't feel that way, because you should, because of what's out there, and you can't avoid that. It's there. So that's my answer to that question, because we never got back around to me having it. But I definitely, it bothers me, you know. It bothers me for anyone, but it bothers me especially because you know, you're my friend and we've been through this a lot. And the fact that you feel that way, it's not fair.
Clay, one of the things you asked is like, how do we go? Like, where do we go from here? How do we move forward? How do we address?
Mhm.
And I think a big issue that I think we can kind of kickstart it for people individually is listen to your friends, listen to people who are telling you these are their experiences. And if and sometimes, I've had friends that have said, I don't understand that because it's not my reality. And they're right, it's not their reality. It's not real for them because it's not anything that they've ever experienced or understood, because they've not lived it. And I can explain it. I can tell them how it feels, but they've never lived that, so they can't understand it. It's not that they're not allowed to understand it.
And it's not that they're not trying. It's just that in reality, you can't, right?
You can empathize, but you can't understand. And there's a difference. But I'm not saying that you're not allowed to have an opinion about understanding, though. Just want to be clear.
Picking on Anna.
I'm hilarious. But listening to your friends of color, listening to their stories, listening to how they feel, because even if you don't feel it, we don't necessarily need your validation to feel what we feel, but just listening and, trying to think about, each one of your friends and how they navigate life being different than from yours.
From a behavior standpoint, let me ask you this.
But Sean's eyeballs are floating over there.
He's always like this. As far as behavior goes, and I was listening to someone today that was put up multiple races and mentioned that you have in the multiple races, if you want to subcategorize, you've got some at the bottom of each. He's going, go ahead, go pee. Anyway. But you have categories of each race, and then when you get to the criminal category, that's where a lot of these stereotypes begin. That's where a lot of these, initial reactions to people unfairly comes in. Does anybody think that there's any merit to that each race has their the criminal thinkers that make it tough for the rest of the race, we'll say? Or it was...
Well, absolutely. Everybody's got their, right? So from a white man's perspective, right? There's the criminal. So, all right, here's a good stereotype for us that I'm sick of. I'm going to go shoot up a school. Right?
Right? Shaking her head.
That's the one we're hit with, right? The white guy's going to be the one that's going to shoot up like a lot of people at one time.
Yeah.
So there's that one. So, and
then
let
me ask you this. Let's do that.
South Georgia, I'm automatically a racist if when I talk to people, and I'm not. I may be at times, admittedly, I may be a little insensitive, but I'm not racist. I love all people, or hate all people, however you want to look at it. But I do everybody equally.
Go ahead, Dr. Williams. You got.
It's human nature to form, and it doesn't make it right, but it's natural and human nature for people to have a bias, and that bias comes from somewhere, and a lot of times that bias comes from a bad place.
And moreover, it's natural for people to break rules and the law.
Yep.
I don't know how many of you all on this call have left your car at a meter and did not pay for it, or left it there beyond the time and could not pay for it, but that was against the law, and you probably got it.
I never park at meters.
So we ain't got no meter.
We all had a propensity to commit crimes. I mean, we all are rule breakers. But there are degrees to which some people really take that seriously. They maybe set up some type of bank heist, or maybe they decide that they want to sell a product on the streets that you can't get from a pharmacy. I mean, People decide what degree to which they want to break rules. I mean, people break rules. They do.
Well, to do this is be fun. And when I mentioned that every race has their what they call bad apples earlier, that we referred to it as.
Sure.
Let's go. I'm going to start. So make it a good example. The bad apples that I would like to see gone are these white supremacist rednecks. That's not my race. Go ahead, girl. That's not my race. That's the way I look at it. You know, if we're going to break this down racially, and if I'm about to speak for the color that I am, those people got to go. That's Chauvin to me. You know, that's these dumbasses. I would never support them. And I hate that those freaking racist idiots sometimes put myself in a compromising situation where I'm the furthest thing from that, you know? So I have to recognize that sometimes when I go into a conversation. And I mean, in my race, and Anthony, you could give me yours, those people got to go. That's out. You know, that's because that's stirring up a lot of problems. And obviously we're sitting there talking about it. It's pissing us off. Dr. Williams, would you have anything to say to that, or personally?
Thinking about how interesting it is that supremacists break laws out of a place of power, and drug dealers break laws out of a place of lacking. You know, people do illegal activities on the low end because they need money to eat and to sleep, and you know, maybe they can't find a job, maybe they don't have the education. I'm not making an excuse, because people find ways to do things that are legal, but I think it's just interesting that criminalization is shaped by, can be shaped by, not necessarily is, but can be shaped by your position in society.
Mm-hmm. Yeah. I did not think of that's very insightful. We got an intellectual on here, Sean. That's very good.
I know. I tell people all the time. Back in Clay, we used to hang out. You know, I used to smoke more grass and grow on the ground. Ain't nobody ever.
True.
Ain't nobody ever sold me drugs.
You know, it's bad when the entire panel is like, "Yep." All right, so I believe you.
But Zora Neale Hurston said it best when she said, "That's my skin folk, not my kinfolk." Just because we are the same, we have the same color skin, does not mean that we are the same people.
That's the theme of the show, I think. You know, and it's misrepresentation when it comes into light, like it has, and the media exploits the shit out of it. You know, so yeah, very, very good point. You know, all right, Annie, your turn. How do you? Because you're different. You know, you're actually, you know, I can say you're by yourself in the panel, but you're the only one of Hispanic origin, and I'm just curious what do you see, you know, in that same topic?
Can you repeat the question?
Well, basically, we were referring to the people in our race that poorly misrepresent the entire race, and are the reasons for so many stereotypes that we deal with, you know, and how we can be, and how a lot of times you get looked at maybe for an exact opposite for what you actually are because of I call them the low class of the race.
Well, let me think about how I want to answer this. I don't think that, okay. It's not that I want to get rid of anybody, because that's not the way I roll, but I wish people made better decisions, and I wish that they were put in a position to make better decisions. But I would like to not be categorized, you know, as a whole, as a rapist or a drug dealer or a murderer. I think that is it's kind of where I don't want to be categorized with any of those people, because that's not what we are as a whole. That's not what we are as individuals. Anybody can be that. And so I don't like necessarily people who go out of their way to hurt other people. So if I can get rid of anybody, that's going to be who I want to get rid of across the board.
I mean that like depopulation. I'm not Bill Gates,
Yeah,
but
I know.
but
Social Darwinism. Just remove the warning labels and let them thin themselves out.
Amen.
Yeah.
I'm with it.
or give them a vaccine made by Bill Gates. Either way.
I think the question is, and I think a better way to put it would be not get rid of those people, but actions that people do that perpetuate a stereotype from our race. Wish they would stop doing those actions. Whatever.
Yeah.
What are they?
And what I'm doing right now is simply calling them out. Yes, those, they don't report the good stuff on the news. They report the bad stuff. So that's all you see, and I'm just here to say that's not us. That's not who we are. I mean, I look at Sean, he's look at the way he's dressed, he's a good representation for himself. And
I think of it like this, especially when it comes to the media. Like, if you go to any company, I don't care how good that company is, it could be the greatest company on the planet. If you go into their customer service department, from their perspective, they're going to tell you that that is the worst company in the world, because from their perspective, all they're dealing with all day long are the complaints, the bad things from their company. They're not dealing with the good things. They're not seeing the 99.9 approval rating that their company has on whatever grading site you want to go to. And I think the same thing happens to all of us, especially through the media. The media only reports the bad because that's what gets viewership. And in doing so, we all get these negative impressions of everything because that's all we see all the time.
I just want to,
jump in.
we know the degenerates that we have. I see them, Clay. We talk about them, Tent City and stuff. But I just want to share with you all a quote by Zora Neale Hurston. And I'm going to quote her a lot because she's my favorite author. But I am an angry Black man, and I do feel the need to speak out because Zora Neale Hurston said, if you are silent about your pain, then they'll kill you and say you enjoyed it.
Pretty good.
So I feel the need to say something.
And you should. This platform is here to give us all the voice. We're going to continue to share this. And, basically, we're not going to do any good unless we all come together like we are now, to talk about, like you said, if you're silent, you're not going to get anywhere with it. So don't be silent with it. Let's talk about, so we can bring awareness. Most of it's already known, but nobody wants to speak about it and just don't want to address it. I
think it kind of goes back to what the doctor was saying, is that you have people, how would those officers have been treated had they spoken up? Like, what they didn't speak up because they maybe didn't feel like they could, or for whatever reason they didn't. And I feel
have a
like
platform.
A lot of times I feel like I'm guilty of not speaking up when I should, not necessarily when I see something that's being done that's wrong, but when I'm in conversations with people and, they say something that I don't agree with, or they say something that is biased or can even be construed as racist, I don't say anything in certain situations because I'm either at work or I'm with people that I'm at church, or I'm with family, and in all those places you should feel safe enough to say something, especially when what you're hearing isn't what you agree with. When I worked in Georgia, I worked for a pharmacy that was locally owned. They were not part of a corporation, so it wasn't like I could go to corporate and file a complaint. But I remember feeling like I listened to these pharmacists every day talk so just with things that I did not agree with. I mean, almost to the point that I felt like it was sort of like, how far can I push the envelope with knowing that it was around election time, and some of the hot button topics that were this past election, immigration being one of them. I am a Hispanic woman working in your pharmacy. You are my superior and you're talking negatively about people that look like me and expect me not to say anything. And I had to take it. I had to shut up and take it because I needed that job. And now, not me, 4 years ago, me now would say something. Don't need that job. Find another one. But I would not be able to do, that now. I would not be able to keep quiet now, because now, like Mashawn said, if you don't say anything, you're complacent with it. You're accepting it. You're agreeing with it, for lack of a better word.
Yeah. For us, and I'm going to say this so we can close it out right after this, but and we'll pick up for another part. We'll talk about that in a minute. But to bring it, the goal, what I wanted to achieve here is I want a display of people's perspectives, the real perspective, not the put on perspective, not doctored up media perspective, but the real perspective, get the real feelings out with the end goal of peace. You know what I mean? It's like, we're not supposed to agree to everything, but if we come together with real issues and, let's be open and clear about what we feel is an issue, then we can set up a goal for peace that way. You know what I mean? It's like my problem with a lot of the way the protest is escalating and they're being sabotaged by people that have no goal of peace is, the protests are not seemingly bringing peace because they all want to just remain on two sides. It's that we'll want to fight it out, we'll say. If we don't come together with it, how will we find the peace? You know what I mean? If you're not willing to listen to the other party, you're not going to be peaceful. You're not ever going to be peaceful if you want to call it two groups. And the best example I saw of that, I actually shared someone's post on LinkedIn. Coincidentally, it's got the most views in a hurry of anything else I ever post, just because the message was clear. The video was, it wasn't like a protest. It was a community gathering, and they were doing the Cupid Shuffle, and it was police officers dancing with the crowd. You can imagine that crowd, will find some resolution and some understanding and some empathy for one another.
Resolution before they did the Cupid Shuffle. So there had been some agreements about how the police should behave when they are in interaction with the committee. And so they signed an agreement, and then they did the Cupid Shuffle.
And isn't that peaceful? You see what I mean?
Yeah. It was peaceful after a little bit of writing. It was peaceful.
Well, we still found something peaceful. I hadn't found anything peaceful at the end of these nights because they have to end it.
It was good to see resolve there. I do agree with
that. And that's kind of, if you look at it on a large scale, we need to do that as a nation.
Definitely need resolve, because everybody is becoming fatigued from the situation.
And that's, to me, that's MLK's niece statement. I think that's what she was indicating, is you find peace, you find justice too.
Okay. Good stuff, people.
So anyway, part 2, we're going to have to continue this a little bit later, and it's getting late and it's running long. But yeah, is everybody up to do an updated show coming up? Hey, you want to bring Ken and Otis in too? Because I hate that Ken missed the opportunity, because I know his voice needs to be heard, and Otis from the previous episode, I'm sure bring him back in as well. But we don't have to schedule a time right now. But does everybody want to agree to come back in for another one and see what else we got to spill out?
Yeah, absolutely.
So, Sean, you got no option. So, moving forward, I'm going to end it up, and I'm going to get this posted out where people can see it too. Just share it around. I want to see if we bring in some new guests as well. I want to bring as many perspectives as we can, and see if we can't start a peaceful movement. It's peace isn't found with everybody getting along, for sure. All right. Anybody got anything to add, or is that it for the night? Mm-hmm. Good. All right. I'm closing out. Thanks to everyone.
Thanks.
Can't wait to see you again.
Thank you all. I appreciate you all coming on.
Yeah. Thanks for inviting us.
Not a problem. Thank you, guys.
It's nice to meet you guys.
Oh yeah, absolutely. You'll see a lot more of us.
All right. You all have a good night.
Peace out.
You too.
Guys.